Welcome to another episode of Recording in Progress, the show where we take just a little moment to slow down the recording just a little bit so we can all get a break from our busy day and have some progress.
And what better way to slow things down than actually slowing things down in Vaporwave?
This is Recording in Progress. I'm Larry, and we got Jim with me here today. How's it going, Jim?
Howdy how.
Okay.
Uh-oh, I guess Larry can't hear me.
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
I can hear you fine. I had a little oopsie doopsie.
Oh, hey, no boomer moments, remember? No boomer moments.
I remember, but apparently I sabotaged myself a little bit there. But we're starting off with a little bit from Mr. David Hasselhoff because it's about redemption. It's about a phoenix rising from the ashes, and nothing really sums that up like one Mr. David Hasselhoff and his wonderful career as a musical performer and an actor. And it also ties into our first story of the evening. The man who Disney said will never work in this mouse house again is back.
He's working in the mouse house again.
He's back in the mouse house. For those of you who aren't from the Florida area, you may know that the mouse house has a problem with people with connections to pedophilia, keeping getting jobs. But James Gunn, who made some inappropriate comments about pedos, now that the merger with Disney and Fox is over, suddenly gets invited back to the mouse house. That's so strange. How he got let go for a little while when the merger talks were happening and then came back in. Almost like they were trying to chill out the investors. Isn't that weird, Jim?
That's a little weird.
So from Deadline Hollywood, exclusive, even though it's in a half dozen other sites, redemption and second chances have long been superhero movie staples, and today it looks like life has imitated art. I have learned that Disney has reinstated James Gunn as the writer-director of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I've confirmed it with Marvel and Gunn's camp. Although they actually were never going to remove him as writer because he created too many characters as an executive producer. It would be been a giant pain in the behind. They had to pay him a whole bunch of money in the back end. So they decided not to do that. The decision to rehire Gunn, he was fired in July by Disney after alt-right journalists made public a fusillade of decade-old social media missives that made light of pedophilia and rape. Was one that Mulled and actually made months ago, following conversation with Disney Studios leadership and the team at Marvel Studios. Now, Disney actually knew about all those rape jokes and pedophilia jokes. So they knew about this, and they let him go as what is most likely a PR move. Why the change of heart? After the firing, Walt Disney Studios chairman Alan Horn met with Gunn on multiple occasions to discuss the situation. Persuaded by Gunn's public apology and his handling of the situation after, Horn decided to reverse course and reinstate Gunn, almost like it was a PR campaign move. The social media messages were indefensible, but the filmmaker never did anything but blame himself for poor judgment displayed at the time when he was emerging from the Troma Film Factory and attempted to be a provocateur. And again, he also had made apologies for these same posts a few years ago. So again, little bit of a disingenuousness from our good folks over Deadline. There were no reports that Gunn ever engaged in the behavior he lampooned, unlike the defensive posture exhibited by Kevin Hart that led to him skipping the Oscars. Gunn fell on his sword early and often and never lashed out at Disney. That's weird. So what they're saying is you should beg for forgiveness from the mob. And you should supplicate yourself on your knees.
So he apologized for these tweets long before.
And then he apologized for them again. And that's good. But Kevin Hart, who said, I made a joke, and I stand by it being a joke, go F yourselves. He's the bad guy, according to Deadline Hollywood. Ultimately, Gunn's missives were poorly chosen words and not actions, though Disney's quick trigger was completely understandable when the social media messages were first reported by outlets like Fox News. Those outlets reported that Gunn's missives were exposed as a payback for Gunn being a vocal critic of President Donald Trump. and also asking for people like Roseanne Barr to get fired for inappropriate comments. Though Roseanne never apologized for being on Ambien. Gunn's returned
You don't
to
understand. I was on Ambien.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how much Ambien and booze you have to be on to become racist, but, maybe there's a number. I haven't figured it out yet.
We do know that people who take Ambien will often wake up and someone will tell them hey, did you know that you created yourself a 2-course meal last night?
Yeah.
What? I did?
Also, you apparently led a cross burning.
What? What?
I
had my local chapter in NAACP.
Oh, you should probably resign.
Oh no. Wait, you're not really black, are you?
Gunn's return to Guardians of the Galaxy 3 got complicated when he signed on to write and direct the Suicide Squad sequel for Warner Brothers and DC.
Wait, James Gunn is responsible for that?
Well, no, he's going to be doing the sequel, not the terrible one. He's going to be the one responsible for fixing it.
Oh, okay.
Marvel Studios has agreed to
Best of luck.
Yep. Marvel Studios has agreed to commence production of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 after Gunn completes Suicide Squad 2, which will also feature Dave Bautista.
It almost sounded like you said commit Suicide Squad. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Made the whole thing easier, though, was the fact that Marvel Studios never met with or considered any other directors for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, despite the speculation that Thor Ragnarok Helmer, Taika Waititi, and Vice Helmer, Adam McKay, were in the mix. So, again, it's almost like this was a giant PR stunt to not have negative attention when the Disney-Fox merger was going on. Marvel Studios has remained mum on all the details concerning Guardians of the Galaxy 3, as the Kevin Feige-led division turned its focus towards Captain Marvel and Avengers Endgame. Marvel this week set Destin Cretton to direct Shang-Chi. More on Shang-Chi in a moment, because we're going to talk about that later in the show. Prior to his dismissal, Gunn had written a script which Marvel confirmed would be used for the third Guardians of the Galaxy installment, something that you should have written much earlier in the article, as opposed to putting a lot of bad filler in. I expected Gunn to confirm all this as he supports the release of Brightburn, which is James Gunn's new movie. Hey, isn't that weird? That James Gunn is releasing a new movie, and then he gets this big deal with Disney as the end of the PR campaign. That's so weird.
Oh, wow. What is this movie about?
Brightburn. I'll talk about that in a second. There'll be an interval, of course, of those who will gripe about Gunn's return, but creatively, Guardians will benefit from his return. The entire cast of the film was outspoken in their desire to have Gunn back. Thing though sarcastic, the tweaks did not match his personal actions. Cast clearly loves him, blah, 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 blah. The controversy shattered the camaraderie the cast had with the filmmaker, put performing franchise in limbo. Marvel has done a great job of allowing its filmmakers to inject their personalities into each franchise, and perhaps none has been as stamped on by one filmmaker's Gunn and Guardians. The 2 installments grossed over $1.6 billion worldwide, with the sequel outgrossing the first picture. So, we're going to talk about Brightburn here just for a second, because I plan to see this when it comes out, because it looks kind of cool.
Cool.
So, Brightburn is a 2019 American superhero horror film produced by James Gunn and Kenneth Wong. It's directed by David Yarovesky from a screenplay by Mark and Brian Gunn. It stars Elizabeth Banks, David Denham, Jackson A. Dunn, Matt Jones, and Meredith Hagner. It's produced and financed by Screen Gems, Stage 6 Films, Trollport Entertainment, and the H Collective, and will be distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. Brightburn was announced as an untitled James Gunn horror project in December 2017, shortly before Gunn was forced out by Disney for the upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Gunn was attached as a producer, with his brothers Brian and Mark writing the script. The synopsis. What if a child from another world crashed on Earth, but instead of becoming a hero to mankind, he proved to be something far more sinister? In this horrific take on a classic superhero trope, a couple, Elizabeth Banks and David Denham, adopt a baby who came from the stars while they attempt to raise the boy, Jackson A. Dunn. To use his powers for good, an evil begins to grow inside that he unleashes. So, yeah.
Was this an apology for the things he's done? Is that what this is?
No, it's not. It's a movie he's doing to help his brothers get a movie script writing gig. And, so let me kind of put my whole little spin on the James Gunn thing. I want people to be more real human beings and less NPCs on Twitter. I also don't like people who get into social media brigades to try to get people fired and screwed out of their jobs. So I was on both sides of the Gunn issue. I thought he didn't really say anything that should have gotten him fired, especially since, as it later came out, Disney knew about it all the time, and he had made multiple apologies about it in the media when it got brought up. But at the same point in time, he was one of the people promoting the poisonous culture online himself. Now, he's not one of the worst people promoting the poisonous culture, but he was certainly a party to it. I hope that we don't see any more of that from him, and I hope we get a good movie, and I hope he gets to move on, and everybody gets to move on, and I think it's going to be fun to see what happens when somebody's directing a movie for DC and a movie for Marvel back-to-back. I think that's going to be a fun little moment for comic book movie fandom. So what did you think about that whole James Gunn fiasco when it came out, Jim?
I thought a lot of those tweets were kind of like, you had to understand the context of Twitter back in those days. Because those were tweets back in like 08 or something?
Yeah.
09. So they didn't really have retweet functions or like reply threads, so you didn't really know what he was saying a lot of the times. A lot of those were pretty just like, oh, that's not a good look. But I was really kind of bummed. Like, I was willing to go, okay, that was probably, 10 years ago. We all kind of said edgy shit, you know.
And also,
10 years ago, before the culture war really was taken off. That was
being edgy on Twitter back then was how you got noticed.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Someone can go through my old tweets.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
You mean tweets where you're making fun of Stefan Molyneux? I'm sure you don't want anybody to look at those.
I have stuff going after the Zeitgeist movement. I think there was a good period where I was talking about almost nothing but hookah-related stuff. Back in
that sounds like a weird phase of your life.
Yeah. I used to run a hookah website back in the day. It was fairly popular. Fairly popular.
Yeah. But we got more people coming back for Redemption, Jim. This is going to be an episode about redemption. Neil deGrasse Tyson, or popularly mocked on the internet as Black Science Man, will return to TV after misconduct investigation. The astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson will return to television after the broadcasters of his show announced Friday that they had completed their investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against him.
Oof, where is this?
That's the New York Times article. It's the second one down on the list.
Windows open right now. I was doing other things. I was linking the show. Where is it? Time to break. Oh, you updated it.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, there we go. I got it. Okay.
You got it?
I had the old version. Boom,
but you didn't open.
There you go.
Yeah.
I opened it an hour ago.
The investigation is complete, and we're moving forward with both Star Talk and Cosmos. Fox Broadcasting and National Geographic have these two shows. Star Talk will return to the air with the remaining 13 episodes in April on National Geographic, and both Fox and National Geographic are committed to finding an air date for Cosmos. There will be no further comment, especially since Fox is no longer making its own shows.
You know, people don't think that sexual harassment allegation be like it is, but it do.
So, for those who don't remember, a former assistant of his claimed he asked her to his apartment, and he made her feel uncomfortable by holding her hand, looking into her eyes in what he called a Native American handshake. As she was leaving, she was leaving.
Sorry, what was that?
A Native American handshake. You know, it used to be called Eskimo kisses. I'm guessing he kind of went a little weird with that. As she was leaving, and she said he told her, "I want you to know that I want to hug you so bad right now, but I know that if I do, I'll just want it more." And there were some other professors who claimed that at a drunken mixer, he made some comments about her tattoos that made her feel uncomfortable. So Neil deGrasse Tyson is apparently not rapey. So that's good.
That's good.
He does still make slanderous comments about people and make intellectually pedantic comments on Twitter, but he's not a sexual molester.
Yeah. How many times do we need to be reminded that a parsec isn't what Star Trek says it is, or Star Wars says it is? We know. We know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that.
Thanks.
Yeah, Force Awakens, that was the joke.
That was the joke.
That was the joke.
In fact, you could tell that by looking at how Sir Ian McClellan rolled his eyes when Han Solo made that comment. It was clearly about him being a BS artist. Unfortunately, when they made the script for Solo, they had to kind of reverse course on that and make it out into being something real. So that's yeah. That's a problem with prequels, is sometimes you make things that are stupid because you don't really have a story to tell.
Yeah, like a cat scratching. Hey, that interesting thing about that one character that you want to know?
Cat scratch his eye?
Yeah, it was just a cat scratch.
Oh, no.
But it was a space cat, so...
We got somebody who's a future candidate for redemption. Aunt Becky from Full House, Lori Loughlin, got fired from Netflix because she had an oopsie-doopsie.
They're going to let her go, huh?
Netflix may be saying bye-bye to Aunt Becky. The streaming service booted actress Lori Fuller from her role in Fuller House in the wake of this week's college admissions scandal. So, for those of you who haven't been paying attention to the social media or the news, a bunch of rich people started bribing folks at a bunch of different colleges, and they did that to try to get their kids in so their kids would have, bigger social status. Lori Loughlin tried to get her kid into a fancy college so she could use that to get better money on her YouTube and Instagram influencer accounts. So, what's your thought about this whole situation, Jim?
I don't know. I haven't thought about Full House in quite a while.
Well, let's talk about the actual interesting part of this story. Rich people buying their children's way into colleges. A thing that has never happened before in the history of America.
Never happened.
And it is literally the most shocking thing ever.
George W. Bush. Excuse me. I had something in my throat.
Yeah. Also, her daughter has no plans to return to the University of Southern California. She feels she worked very hard to get different work deals, and everything is gone. She thought she knew what the future had in store for her, and it all just crumbled away. A never-ending nightmare for her. But she's still a famous model. So, that's nice. Oh, my parents, my mom might be going to jail for a little oopsie-doopsie. And she used the school as a backdrop to get some Amazon-sponsored content. And, she basically used it to advertise Amazon Prime for students. But, so let's say you were the head of a college and a rich and famous celebrity from a show people barely remembered came to you and said, hey, listen, I need to get my kid in.
How does people not remember this? I think people are trying everything their best to forget it. And that earworm of a song that keeps playing in my head while we were trying to look for a vaporwave version of it. Which, by the way,
but at least we got the Hoff. The Hoff was better. So the fact nobody has made a good vaporwave version of this song made it better. So, if I were running a college, and a key thing to this whole scandal is they didn't actually bribe the college. They were bribing various components of the college and people in the SAT testing. But if I ran a college and a rich person said, hey, I got a kid who's good but not good enough to get into your school. They tell you what I do. You're going to make a donation that's going to pay for a scholarship for a student of, need and worth and value for 20 years, which means at least 5 students will benefit from this moment. You're obviously going to pay for your kid's tuition, and you're going to pay for a professor to teach at this school for 20 years. So you're going to drop that donation. So if you can do that, we can work something out. Wouldn't that seem like a reasonable deal, Jim? Wouldn't that seem like a good deal for the school?
Yeah.
You get a new professor, you get a student, so it would be better for everybody, and it would enrich the school.
As if the schools need enriching.
Now,
with all those tuition fees.
Well, some other people need some enriching, though. A woman is suing Felicity Huffman, Lori Loughlin and others involved in an admission scam for $500 billion, claiming that the two prevented her son's admission into colleges. So we're going to talk about a little thing about law. You have to prove that you've had an actual damage or loss. You're not going to be in a position where you can prove that, yes, your son was definitely kept out because of this. But yeah, so someone's trying to sue over this too.
Where is this lawsuit? I don't. Oh, here it
is. That's on the Hill.
I got it.
The Hill. I got it. And they're trying to get like a little class action deal together. And two Stanford students are suing, saying that they argue that they were not given an equal admission opportunity and their degrees are less valuable because of the scandal. Also, William H. Macy is involved in this because it's one of his kids who's with Felicity Huffman, who's part of the whole deal.
He looks awful.
He does. Well, he has a show where he plays a drunk bum from Boston.
Oh.
So I'm guessing like maybe he was filming for that show, and that's why he looks so disheveled. That'd be my guess.
Yeah.
And also, playwright David Mamet had a little bit of a joking comment about all this. And that's the Hollywood Reporter one. I worked for very many years in and around elite universities, and I'm able to report that their admission policies are an unfortunate and corrupt joke. Harvard was once sued for restricting the admission of qualified Jews, a contest currently being waged by Asians. So for those of you who don't know, there's a group of Asian students who are suing, claiming that they were being deprived of admission to colleges because of their race, and their race made them too qualified to go to the school. The unqualified may be accepted for many reasons, among them as legacies and onto account of large donations made by their parents. I did not see a difference between getting a kid to school by bribing the building committee and by bribing someone else, but apparently the second is against the law, so be it. I've known to work with Bill Macy for nearly 50 years. We started 2 theater companies together, one of which is The Atlantic, is still in operation in New York after 35 years. I've known Felicity Huffman for those 35 years. She was my student. My colleague worked in many of my films and created roles on stage in 3 of my plays. I'm crazy about them both. That a parent's zeal for her children's future may have overcome her better judgment for a moment is not only unfortunate, it is, I know we parents would agree, a universal phenomenon. If there was ever a use for the Texas verdict, this is it. For the uninitiated, the Texas verdict is not guilty, but don't do it again. So an element of all this that's a problem to me is it's about status. So for certain professions, it's all about, you have to go to an elite school to be at the top of the legal pyramid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they did a little study about that involving lawyers. So where do you think most lawyers who work in California went to law school?
USC?
No.
The Trojans?
A little bit more broad than that.
Oh, UCLA?
No, a little bit more broad than that. They went to California or Nevada or Arizona.
You mean Nevada?
Nevada. They went to Nevada. They went to Arizona. They went to California.
Nevada is a series of mountains that a bunch of people ate their kids.
Oh, I did not know that was a cultural faux pas.
Yeah.
I have learned something today.
If you come to Nevada and you say, "Hey, I love your great state of Nevada," you're going to get looks as if like you went to Wichita and said, "Hey, I like this Arkansas River." You mean the Arkansas River. I learned that the hard way.
So, New York, Wall Street, big business. Where do you think most of those people went to college?
Illinois? Oh, I'm sorry, Illinois?
No, but we're gonna get to that in a minute.
Okay.
We're gonna get to that in a minute. They went to school in New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut.
Okay.
Now, kids who work as lawyers in Chicago, in the big businesses in Chicago, where do you think they went to school?
Illinois.
Or Indiana. So they found that your proximity to your future job tends to be directly correlated to where you went to school. So going to USC for a law degree that doesn't necessarily mean that USC is going to make you a top lawyer. That just means, hey, you live in the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area, and you went to law school in the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area. That means you have a leg up on anybody else trying to apply to be a lawyer in the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area.
Oh.
So Harvard may have the top tier law school in the world, but, you know...
By the way, it's Los Angeles, okay? I'm kidding.
Well,
don't ever call it that.
Isn't USC in the Valley?
I believe so. No. Is it? Oh, I have to check.
So, like, Harvard...
I only went there once for a football game. What do I know?
So, Harvard may be the best law school in the world, but Harvard just happens to be in proximity to both Boston and New York. So that's why a lot of their law school students go there.
Oh, it's located in Los Angeles, California.
So it's not in the Valley.
Los Angeles Valley. No, it's not in the Valley.
Okay. I had to make sure we couldn't, we didn't have the opportunity to make a Chinatown joke.
Yeah. I haven't heard anybody call the Valley in a while. I'm just saying. Then again, I also haven't lived in California in a long time, so I'm always like, Inland Empire? No. No.
But while we're talking about corruption in Hollywood, let's talk about corruption in Silicon Valley. We're going to be touching on that a little bit later in more detail. YouTube fought Brie Larson trolls by changing its search algorithm.
Oof.
How a simple news tag can change everything. If you searched Brie Larson on YouTube a couple of days ago, the top search results called for a boycott of Captain Marvel and angry rants about Lawson's involvement in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. With one change, YouTube made it all disappear. You mean like this?
Well,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure my snap made a good cinematic audio quality there.
Well, I think maybe the trolls should have aimed for the head. I'm just saying.
Just saying. Don't aim for the chest troll. Aim for the head. This week, YouTube recategorized Brie Larson as a newsworthy search term. What that does is one very important job. It makes the search algorithms surface videos for authoritative sources on the subject instead of videos from individual creators. YouTube responds with videos from Entertainment Tonight, ABC, CBS, CNN, and other news outlets. Hey, Jim, you remember when YouTube and social media used to give you things you were interested in?
Yeah.
Not things that corporations want you to be interested in?
Let's see. Yeah, it's all positive. Well, there's half in the bag.
Yeah, half of the bag, you can't keep them down. No. And so we've seen this broader shift, and we're going to talk a little bit more detail about Captain Marvel's performance, as it were. But do you think that with Twitter instituting new things and everybody tamping down on personal discourse and discussion, do you think people are just going to abandon social media, or do you think we're just going to suck up the sop that these corporations gave us because we've all kind of gotten addicted to it now?
No, we're going to do something worse. We're going to basically MySpace it. We're going to be
MySpace
like, oh, this is terrible. Let's go to another platform that's run by this other evil conglomerate. Yeah.
Yes, but
everything's so much better.
Yes, but all the people who try to do that get their platform shut down because, you let people say mean things on your internet platform.
Yeah.
You can't use banks now.
Yeah.
So
no, what they do is they come out and they say, "Hey, we're going to be all for frozen peaches, so come on over and get your frozen peach fix, your freeze peach fix."
Peaches.
Yeah,
I do love peaches.
And then they go, "Oh, we can't do that anymore because banks are taking away our money." So, yeah, you know that little review you did for Captain Marvel, you said it wasn't that good. Yeah, that's now hate speech.
Yeah,
but Richard Spencer can keep his Twitter account. That's okay.
Yeah,
that's fine.
So, speaking of horrible garbage people, there's a new trailer out for the new Charlie Manson movie, and people are being critical about that. Trailer for Charlie Manson movie. Charlie says humanizes the murderers. Maybe these girls are victims too. Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the only movie coming down the pike in 2019. It takes place in Los Angeles during the infamous Manson murders. Charlie Says is directed by Mary Haran, who worked on American Psycho, and will hit selected theaters and video-on-demand platforms beginning May 17th via IFC Midnight. While this will hardly be the first film inspired by the exploits of Charlie Manson and his misguided followers, I predict this one may be the most controversial for one particular reason. It attempts to humanize several of the murderers. To this day, there's little sympathy for Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten, none of whom have been granted parole. It'll be interesting to see how the portrayals of these female killers will go over with those who lived through the hellish nightmare summer of 1968, especially those related to the victims. Also, David Tennant, famous for Doctor Who, is going to be playing Matt Smith is playing Charlie Manson. But again, he was famous for Doctor Who. So, what do you think about people in the Manson family? Do you think they're people too?
Yeah.
And that we need to humanize them?
Yeah. Okay, so Charlie Manson was a cult leader. One of the and it's kind of obvious considering if you listen to some of the accounts of what it was like being in the Manson family. Like he would do like drug therapies with them and like hypnotize them and do things that were very similar to what goes on in Scientology, which is not too surprising considering that Charles Manson was a member of the Church of Scientology until he quit.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
How people who are members of the Church of Scientology went on to form their own cults afterwards.
Yes. Yeah. Or Landmark Education, which again, Landmark Education was also started by a guy who was a former Scientologist.
The EST program.
Right, EST. I think that is Landmark Education.
Well, actually, Werner Erhard started a couple of different cults.
Okay.
You know, basically, once the jig was up with one, he moved on to another cult.
Okay. So yeah, Charles Manson quit the Church of Scientology citing that it was too crazy for him. And legit quote. So
the question is, do you think the body thetans made him do it?
Yes, obviously. Duh. Yeah, Charles Manson started his own cult because he kind of learned all that stuff. And one of the things he used to do is he would give them acid and then basically do like the training routines, the TRs, and kind of make them do exactly what he did. Which is not unlike a lot of the stuff that goes on in Scientology. And
that's a classic go-to. That's a classic go-to cult move.
Yeah. So, I mean, these people really didn't have too much of their own autonomy. Once you start getting into like thought reform, it's really hard to kind of snap people out of it. And in fact, a lot of people who snap out of it actually suffer severe like psychological damage. A really interesting book if you want to read about like early cult deprogramming before they figured out more safer methods of doing it. It's called Snapping, and it actually tells you about like all of the things that you can expect if you try to forcibly deprogram somebody. They go into a snapping phase where they basically snap out of it, and they say that it's kind of like being on top of a skyscraper, and then the skyscraper like moves over 3 inches, and all you do is just fall, and that's what the feeling is like when you realize that you're in a cult. Yeah, it's pretty insidious. So, and for a lot of them have kind of realized what happened to them, and have been very apologetic, and said that they regret everything that they ever did, and they're sorry they ever met Charles Manson, and they're not a big fan of him anymore. So, I mean, it's kind of maybe worth considering listening to their case again and possibly granting them appeal. I mean, Charles Manson was getting appeal processes thrown, but he fucked him up intentionally every time. So,
well, yeah.
Why not these girls?
I'm actually somewhat interested in this anyway because you have a high-profile, popular with women actor being made to play a psychopath who didn't really respect the Whammons. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and by the way. Yeah, and going back to what this article said, like this isn't the first time that they touched on the Charles Manson murders in film. A recent one, and I love plugging this movie because this movie is great. So you might probably want to check out Bad Times at the El Royale, where there's a little bit of an element of that. Yeah,
and it's one of those things that Southern California that Hollywood loves to keep referencing because the producers and a lot of the executives, they were there then, who are the older guys. They saw the movies that were made classically about that stuff. So it's, kind got a whole little circle there. Yep. And also, while we're stuck in the past, what did you think when you saw the end of Bohemian Rhapsody? Did you think, man, I want to see what happens to Freddie Mercury after that Live Aid concert?
Yeah. I also wanted to see Gandhi, too. The one that was referenced in
exactly
UHF, where he goes full Rambo. Yeah.
So Scott Mendelson, who is a friend on Facebook, and actually has talked to me about some of his stuff. He has a reputation of being a bit of a shill. But Scott's a good guy, and there's a talk going around Hollywood of making a sequel. Here's the thing. On the one hand, the Freddie Mercury biopic, which won 4 Oscars last month, is the very definition of a true-life melodrama that doesn't get a sequel. It's a biopic that is nearly cradle-to-grave story of a key historical figure. That figure is indeed deceased by the time the credits rolls. Save for goofy riffs like Crank High Voltage, movies where the lead protagonist dies at the end don't tend to spawn continuations. We never did get that alleged sequel to Gladiator after nearly 19 years after the first film. That ship almost certainly sailed. But there's the other variable. Movies that make as much money as Bohemian Rhapsody did either tend to be sequels, or prequels tend to spawn sequels or prequels. Bohemian Rhapsody earned $250 million domestic from a $51 million debut, which is basically 5 times the money. That's a pretty good turn on investment. It's close to 5.
We should cover the whole period where he goes into space and fights aliens.
Exactly.
And saves the planet.
Actually, Freddie Mercury wanted to... No, it wasn't Freddie Mercury. It was somebody from another band who wanted to... No, it was Freddie Mercury. He had this idea for like a fantasy story that got incorporated into some of the Queen songs.
Oh, you wanted to do like a concept album?
No, he actually wanted to do a book, kind of like Lord of the Rings, that ended up evolving into songs that ended up being pieces of a concept album that were spread out over a couple of different albums.
Oh.
Yeah, so maybe they could have Freddie Mercury dying of AIDS and he slips into his fantasy world.
Huh.
Yeah, and they're predicting that China may push Freddie Mercury, the Queen biopic, over $900 million worldwide. So, how would you make a sequel to the life and death of Freddie Mercury?
Well, they didn't actually show him dying. All they really... What did they? I don't remember.
Well, I mean, he died within like a year or two of the end of the movie. And it wasn't that momentous of a year or two, you know. Dying on AIDS and taking AIDS-suppressing medications. That's a quick rocket ship.
Yeah, he didn't die. It ended on the Live Aid concert, and he was alive for a few years after that and kind of made some weird kind of stuff after that, which I didn't particularly like a lot of the later Queen stuff, but I was there. There's a few years you can cover if you really want to.
Yeah.
Did they cover in the movie that they were upset that he did a cross-dressing?
I don't remember. Because the movie, while it was a very good biopic, formulaic, but it was very good. I don't remember anything else.
Yeah, all I remember was the Live Aid concert, which I kept telling people, like, if you like Queen's music, go and watch it, and watch it in IMAX. Just because, like, when you go and see a movie in IMAX, they turn all the sound knobs up to 11, and it's almost like going to an actual concert, almost.
And the actors all wanted to do that sequence in one shot.
Yeah.
So allegedly, that's all one shot too.
Oh.
So, yeah. Huh. So, somebody decided to talk about their coming out as a proud bisexual woman to her religious family. Amber Heard is currently out promoting Aquaman and setting the seeds up for Aquaman 2, and she's going to shoot calls coming out as bisexual to her religious family. While recalling her own tough experiences coming out to her family, Amber Heard shared a powerful message to those worried about doing the same. Attitudes and hearts can change. Speaking at a South by Southwest panel called Making Change On and Off the Screen, Heard explained the difficulty of telling her religious parents that she was bisexual. I'm from Austin, Texas. My dad is out of Central Casting, Texan. Based on the people I know from Austin, Texas, I have a sneaking suspicion that's a liar, liar, pants on fire statement, but we'll go with that. She's in a recording posted on the South by Southwest website. Big barrel hat, handlebar mustache, loves his gun, good Southern man. And I was raised in a religious home. Naturally, being an outspoken, militant, feminist, lesbian, atheist, vegetarian, I remember when I told them about my relationship that I was in love with this woman. I remember at the beginning that it was just tears. Tears. She continued, they didn't know how to process it because we hadn't built the infrastructure for acceptance and tolerance. For them, it was being thrown into a binary system of processing it, negative or positive. Heard dated photographer Tasho Van Ree for about 4 years in 2008 before coming out publicly 2 years later. After Ellen DeGeneres asked her about her sexuality, she said she felt she had a unique responsibility to speak her truth. I just answered honestly. I could tell by the look of this person's face that it was a big deal, Heard recalled in 2017. My poor publicist, then I realized the gravity of what I have done and why so many people, studio execs, agents, and advisors did not want this coming before my name. I became attached to a label. Never seen myself defined by the person I'm with. You know, so weird that you're on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And Ellen DeGeneres, who boosted her career by saying she was gay, asked you about it, and then you answered, and everybody was shocked about that. Certainly a publicist who would have gone over those questions with the producers for the Ellen show. I mean, surely that's not a lie that you tell rubes who don't know how the entertainment industry works. Especially rubes in Austin, who are hipster rubes. Though the initial reaction wasn't what she had hoped for, Heard said she kept conversations about her sexuality positive, and 5 years later, she and girlfriend Van Ree were actively a part of her family members' lives. I was getting an award, and I asked my parents to drive out to Dallas, and I looked up, and I see them sitting front and center, my dad with his cowboy hat, and here I was getting this gay award. She said, I was giving a speech, I had written something, and I just looked at them, and I said, here's everything. I don't need a speech, this is my speech right here. My parents in 5 years, look at the journey. That is so stunning and brave, Jim. Isn't that so stunning and brave?
It's very stunning and brave.
Now, you know what also came out in the news about Amber Heard, but it's not being put on mainstream websites like USA Today. Johnny Depp was abused by ex-wife Amber Heard. New evidence shows. Huh. Weird.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
New photos and evidence were released to the public on Tuesday, revealing Johnny Depp was abused by his ex-wife, Amber Heard. The latest evidence came to light as Depp sued Heard for $50 million for defamation. The case has shown that Heard has, in fact, admitted to the abuse while being under oath. Heard had alleged that the Pirates of the Caribbean actor had physically abused her during their marriage. The couple separated in 2016 when she filed for divorce and accused him of physically abusing her. But now he has filed a lawsuit against her in which he alleges she punched him in the face and chopped off his finger.
Oof.
The new pictures released show Depp's face with a huge black bruise and a haunting photo of his finger, half chopped off. Depp also submitted 87 surveillance camera videos to the court, 17 depositions of witnesses, which include police officers, and the images. Ms. Heard is not a victim of domestic abuse. She is the perpetrator, the lawsuit says. In the reaction to Amber Heard penning an op-ed in the Washington Post back in 2018, which the lawsuit further says is nothing more than an elaborate hoax and that she is using those claims to further her career in the wake of the Me Too movement.
Larry, are you saying that you don't believe Whammons?
I'm saying
you should
that
just believe Whammons.
I'm saying that there are times not to believe Whammons. We're about to get into that. Unaware that the members of Johnny Depp's security team, including an 18-year veteran of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, were mere feet away, Ms. Heard began falsely yelling, "Stop hitting me, Johnny," the lawsuit states. The interactions culminated with Ms. Heard making false allegations that Depp struck her with a cell phone, hit her, and destroyed the penthouse. There were multiple eyewitnesses to this hoax. And she also allegedly beat her girlfriend prior to marrying Johnny Depp.
I see. This is where I'm going to call BS, because obviously she wasn't there. She was out getting Subway.
Exactly. You need to be out getting some Subway in this scenario. If you go
Debunked.
to the
next article,
if you go to the Twitter, if you want to see if you want to share that finger picture, because that's pretty gruesome. That is pretty gruesome.
We'll show everything else.
Yeah. So Johnny Depp basically let this woman in the press demolish his good name. And then in 2018, when she was high on the hog from Aquaman, and, you know, she was the least interesting part of Aquaman. She was kind of dull and boring, but, you know, she got to ride the coattails in that movie. She decided to talk about abuse and stuff, and that's when Johnny Depp decided he had had enough. I'm kind of fascinated how all these stories are starting to come together in a big axis of lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
That people are going to sue over these sort of false claims. Do you think that's going to be what ends up stopping some of this behavior? Or do we need something cultural to kind of push back and say, no, this is bad. This is not what normal people should do to resolve these kind of problems? What do you think about that?
I don't see any other way. It's just suing people is the best thing you can do. Just saying, hey, you know, you're not allowed to go around just saying that I beat people up when I don't, because I don't. In fact, you were, and I was being a nice guy, not saying anything.
So, to give an idea about domestic abuse, 1 in 4 women are victims of domestic abuse, and 1 in 7 men are. And it gets into complicated permutations as when you break it down into heterosexual and homosexuals. But when you break it down even further, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. So that's really close numbers-wise.
Yeah.
So do we need to champion Johnny Depp as a victim under the current victim outrage culture mentality?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to feed that beast, but is that what it takes to maybe turn some of this around?
I don't know. I mean, wasn't there some group that set up some sort of like men's shelter, and then I got shut down?
Yep. There's only 2, I think, abuse shelters for men that are specialized for men in the entire country. So we're going to go away from a serious issue to an important issue, also involving lawsuits, but it's not that serious. So for those of you who don't know, Star Trek has had a little oopsie-doopsie, and they've been in the middle of a copyright claim lawsuit. So there was an update that we would have gotten to last week, but we were too loaded with other topics. So the Tardigrade video game, for those of you who don't remember, is about a weird little alien tardigrade. And they believe that there was a whole lot of things from that video game that got taken over by the producers of Star Trek Discovery.
It's pretty clear that they just outright ripped it off, yeah.
So from the March 6th update on the blog for the creator, yesterday I filed opposition to the defendant's motion to dismiss. Simply, I'm arguing why their motion to dismiss this case is not valid. Note that when the judge gave us the discovery rights to get information from CBS about their Steam accounts, they haven't met their deadline, and we still did not get anything from them. So, when it comes to lawsuits, and if you don't get your discovery out there, that's generally not a good sign. That's generally not a good sign. That means either you think you got it in the bag, or you think that you have an oopsie-doopsie. On their motions to dismiss, they kept on misguiding the court by stating half-truths, misquoting older cases, and even using poor examples of other tardigrade appearances in media. In fact, the more they try to defend themselves, the cleaner the entire picture gets. They have no good arguments. They're insisting that I'm trying to own copyrights to the real-life tardigrade creatures on Earth. I never claimed I did. They are omitting everything regarding its size, color, and usage in facilitating instantaneous space travel. They're trying too hard to say that the tardigrade is public domain and a scène affaire, scenes that necessarily result from choices of a setting or a situation, meaning that any space-themed production may use them due to their ability to survive in space. My legal complaint is never around the tardigrade's ability to survive in space, as they're trying to say. My complaint is that it's simply about the fictional giant blue tardigrades that are used in instantaneous space travel, with the blonde male botanist, Carter, whom had encountered interracial homosexual acts with a dark-bearded male, Aziz. And there are other little factors to this. And on Midnight's Edge, they had a guy who was involved in the production side of Star Trek, and he claims that originally, before the producer who was involved in American Gods left the program, there was a tardigrade character, but it was just like a crew member. It was just like an alien who looked like a tardigrade. But they realized that would cost too much money, so they decided to make the tardigrade a MacGuffin instead.
Yeah, this is clearly not the same thing, even though all of the elements are exactly the same. And not only that, but Discovery is kind of a hacky kind of show.
It's kind of a hacky show. And on a related note to that, there's there's another Star Trek lawsuit that's a little bit more positive and hopeful. That maybe now we can finally read this Star Trek Dr. Seuss mashup. Federal judge's ruling in a fair use lawsuit is a big win for the First Amendment. What do you find at the intersection between the quadrants of Star Trek and Dr. Seuss? Why, a fair use lawsuit, of course. Thanks to a federal judge's ruling on Tuesday, the suit's supply of lithium crystals might be running dangerously low. Confused? Let's break it down. We've all heard in the 1990 Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. It's an inspiring children's story, often given to students graduating from high school and going off to college. Especially if their parents bribe their way in. Then you'll really go some places. But you might not have heard of Oh, the Places You'll Boldly Go, a 2016 mashup of Star Trek and Dr. Seuss. The book is a crowdfunded brainchild of Comics Mix, a company that creates, as the name suggested, context related to comics and other works of fiction. In 2016, Comics Mix's Glenn Hallman teamed up with longtime cartoon artist Ty Templeton and writer David Gerald, real name David Gerald Friedman, who wrote the renowned episode The Trouble with Tribbles for the original Star Trek series. They started a Kickstarter campaign to fund the project, eventually raising nearly $30,000. Considered boldly to be a parody, a mashup, and a transformative work, according to an order issued on Tuesday from Judge Janice Sammartino of the U.S. District Court of Southern California. But Dr. Seuss Enterprises, which controls the copyright for the late author's works, wasn't having it. Beginning in September of 2016, the company sent out a series of cease and desist letters regarding the unpublished Boldly. In November of that year, Dr. Seuss Enterprises filed claiming copyright violations. The book became trapped in a pocket of null space. It's a long and complicated legal battle over fair use ensued, culminating in Sammartino's summary judgment in favor of Boldly creators. What exactly is fair use? So, Jim, what is fair use?
The fair use has to meet some qualifications. It's not any kind of really legal standard. It's basically kind of like an argument that you can make in court to say, hey, sure, the things that I'm using are copyrighted, right? And I use those copyrighted materials in order to produce my particular good. However, I don't think that my copyright is infringing upon their copyright in a way that'll hurt them. So it has to kind of fit for requirements. I have to pull up what those exact requirements are.
It's Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. There are several factors that must be taken into account when considering whether one work violates the copyright protections of another. Those factors are the purpose and the characters of use, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole, and the effect of the use upon the potential market or value of the copyrighted work.
And none of those really like you can make a strong case just based on just one of those factors or three of those factors, or you can try to pull an argument from all four of those factors and they go, no, it's copyright.
And reasons, one of their legal guys explained on his blog post in October 2016, the fair use doctrine's key elements are subjective and lack bright lines. That means it's rarely possible to use the fair use defense to get out of litigation early. Usually you got to litigate all the way to summary judgment or even to trial.
Yeah, but there are things that are pretty clear cut. If you bring them up in court, chances are like 99.99% you're going to be okay. So if I make a film, or if I make a YouTube video and I'm saying, hey, I don't particularly like Stefan Molyneux, right? Because this has been an issue before. I don't like Stefan Molyneux, so I'm going to take a clip from his YouTube channel and put it on my video, and then I'm going to play him talking, and then I'm going to say, here's why he's wrong.
Or, better yet, you remix his voice into Can't Touch This, but instead of Hammer saying Can't Touch This, it's Molyneux saying Not an Argument.
Yeah. You can do that. But I mean, like the former would be a clear cut case of like fair use as criticism. And if that was ever brought to court, you'd be hard pressed to find a judge who would agree with the plaintiff. Yeah.
So in June 2017, the district court ruled that while Boldly was not technically a parody, it was still a highly transformative work that takes no more than necessary to accomplish its transformative purpose and will not impinge upon the original market for the plaintiff's underlying work. In response to that ruling, Dr. Seuss Enterprises filed an amended complaint, and the Comics Mix crew asked for the lawsuit to be dismissed.
Yeah, that's one of the really important factors is if I create this book based on Star Trek, is it going to take away anything from Star Trek? Like, are people going to go like, oh, I don't need to go see this new TV show now because I have this book? No one's going to do that. People are going to go like, oh, this is a nice supplement to that thing that I enjoy and watch anyway. Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to use this and go like, well, I'm done with Star Trek media now because I have this funny Dr. Seuss book. Nobody. Yeah.
So, a little bit of interesting little hijinks there. On the issue of substantiability, San Martino drew parallels to the fair use case from the 1990s, Leibovitz versus Paramount Pictures, in the effort to market for the 1994 release of the Naked Gun franchise's final film. Paramount released posters of a pregnant naked model with the head of actor Leslie Nielsen. Photographer Annie Leibovitz saw this as a copyright infringement on a nude pregnant photo of actress Demi Moore that she had taken for the famous 1991 Vanity Fair cover. The movie poster was clearly supposed to be a reference to Moore's photo, from the model's posture to her hand placement to the use of a large ring on the same finger. San Martino recalled the defendant's photograph was then digitally enhanced using a computer to make the skin tone and body shape more resemble that of Miss Moore in the plaintiff's original photo. In that case, an appeals court ruled in Paramount's favor on the basis that the photo was a parody. However, the circuit court made sure to differentiate between what is protected under copyright law, unique camera angles, lighting, etc., and what is not, use of an image of a naked pregnant woman in a given pose. In the Dr. Seuss case, San Martino explained that while the plaintiff may claim copyright protection in the unique rainbow-colored rings in the tower on the cover of Go, cannot claim copyright over any dish-shaped item tilted at any particular angle, as doing so would foreclose a photographer from taking a photograph of the Space Needle. So, we could talk about some things about fair use and copyright and other stuff like that, but, you know, there's some positive stories out there, and we do want to focus on getting some good, positive news out there. Some positive news. Oh, by the way, did you know CBS is cutting $100 million from its budget?
Oof.
CBS staffers in a panic over a call for $100 million in cuts. I wonder why they'd be in a panic since they're in a big lawsuit and they have to cut a whole bunch of money. That's weird.
It means CBS All Access isn't a hit?
It's more complicated than that. So CBS All Access. We don't know how many people actually subscribe. We don't know how many eyeballs they get. But there's a lot of different ways you monetize that. You know, you have the actual list of registered accounts. So that's mailing lists, that's metadata. There's money to be mined in there. You can correlate it with other metadata and come up with interesting stuff. You know, then you get the actual eyeballs of what they watch, how often they watch. There's other money beyond just the shows and the actual registration fees, but CBS renewed calls for 100 million cuts, has staffers in the broadcast company, which is still reeling from a series of sexual harassment scandals, in a tizzy over who's in and who's out, the Post has learned. So there's a lot of lawsuits going on, and the big boys are making everybody cut their pay. Sounds like they're looking to make some settlements. Oh, no. We are reorganizing and thinking about the functions that go across multiple divisions. Interim CEO Joe Agnello told analysts at Deutsche Bank Media and Telecom Conference in Palm Beach, Florida on Tuesday, we expect to get $100 million in cost savings. Also, if you don't know, CBS used to be part of old Viacom, and it was old Viacom, now it's CBS. There's a new Viacom, which is called Paramount. They're both owned by the same parent company, which is owned by the Redstone family. Old man Redstone broke the two companies up to double his profit. His daughter wants to get the two companies merged together and then sold to somebody like a Verizon. You know, doing what every other big media company is doing, is finding a big distributor to own them. So what's a good way to do that before your merger is you get yourself tight and efficient, settle out your lawsuits, and then you do a merger. That had staffers at CBS's news division questioning who might be on the chopping block, especially as ratings for the morning and nightly news shows fall, as Gayle King of CBS This Morning is reportedly to be looking to double her $6 million salary. Gayle's looking for $10 million or more. Bodies will have to roll, one well-placed source told the Post. Their morning show hasn't had an executive producer for 2.5 months, this person said. Meanwhile, the evening news team thinks they're all fired. Staffers were already jittery amid signs that the newly promoted CBS News president, Susan Zirinsky, has been rethinking the anchor lineup. Zirinsky is toying with the idea of moving King's co-host Norah O'Donnell to CBS Evening News, playing anchor Jeff Glor, sources said, but who watches nightly news on network TV anymore. If that happens, Norah will want a new deal, further bloating the budget, one source chided. So it's actually going to be more than $100 million in cuts, obviously, based on what this article is telling us. CBS is also rumored to be looking for outside talent, including former Today co-host Ann Curry, who left NBC in 2012 with an annual salary of about $10 million. So do you think she's going to be taking less than 10 or more to come to CBS?
Probably less. So are you saying that by the end of this, we're going to end up just having to just deal with the Orville instead of an actual Star Trek property? Oh, no.
Well, it's possible. It's possible.
The horror. Oh, no. The horror.
And Gayle King, however, thinks she secured her job by having the R. Kelly interview.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. Because that was glorious.
Where R. Kelly admitted, hey, I bought some people. Oh, wait. My lawyers are telling me that I shouldn't say that when I'm being accused of sexually exploiting people and kidnapping them.
I think you misspoke. I think you meant to say where R. Kelly admitted to being an anarcho-capitalist. I think that's what you really meant to say.
And all this is happening while CBS is looking for a new CEO. So, Jim, what do you think? Could we do the job of running CBS on a budget cheaper?
Yeah. Here's my first thing: cut Star Trek Discovery, make a settlement, move on. Buy the Orville, rename it Star Trek. There you go.
So, there's been a lot of dissension in the anime community, and I haven't really talked a whole lot about it with the whole Vic Mignogna situation, mainly because there's all sorts of dumb stuff happening on Twitter. There are people who are admitting to getting Vic thrown out of conventions, who are also admitting to working with people in the companies who are on Twitter, low-key, making negative comments about Vic, which may put major companies into liability for tortious interference from Vic and these conventions. So there's some big oopsie-doopsies, so somebody from the Japan Times decided to cover this. Because, folks in the Japan Times write news for people in Japan. So do you think he interviews people on both sides of this allegation to give a full picture?
I don't know, does he? I don't know too much about this publication.
Let me rephrase that. So, Jim, do you think I would have put this on our show list if he covered both sides of the issue fairly?
No.
Me Too allegations roil U.S. anime conventions. Over the past 2 months, the hashtag Me Too movement, also known as Pound Me Too, breached the American anime convention industry. You like how I said that? Pound Me Too and breached? I think that's a good combination there. Anime convention industry, most feel it was inevitable. Many say it's about time. Remember, it's about time to be breached. And if you look at the picture there, that's a bad picture to combine with breaching. And this is a lady who said that bad behavior at cons have been excused because of the adoration of their fans, but those days appear to be over. She's going to stop the breaching. And it's about time. The first salvo was fired in mid-January in the form of a Twitter thread accusing veteran American voice actor Vic Mignogna.
I'm trying to do the backhand stuff here. Stop making me laugh so hard.
Of homophobia, anti-Semitic behavior, and unwanted sexual contact. And his homophobia is, I don't want to sign pictures of you drawing my characters being gay. I'm not comfortable with that. And anti-Semitic behavior is, I love Jesus. Soon the charges from fans, some of whom claimed they were underage at the time of the alleged transgressions, not transactions, that'd be a different complaint, were joined by those from con staff, members, professional cosplayers, fellow voice actors, and an ex-fiancé. Less than a week after the tweets dropped, Mignola released a public statement rejecting accusations of bigotry, claiming the innocence of his intentions, and apologizing to anyone who felt violated by his show of gratitude or support, which has not been formally charged with anything. So what do you think? Are they saying that he needs to be like James Gunn and just beg and get on his hands and knees and grovel and beg and plead and beg and plead to get his life back? Is that the answer?
Probably. Maybe he can preach too.
Exactly. And then he won't be so homophobic once he's been breached.
Right.
Some Twitter users, including those in the actor's fan club, aggressively defended Mignola. Hashtags proliferated, I stand with Vic. And kick Vic against, and now Vic kicks back, anti-against. The controversy expanded on January 30th when an article appeared on the Anime News Network site, one of the largest English language industry portals. Its headline, Far From Perfect, was borrowed from Mignola's personal apology to his fan club members. Lindsay Leverage, ANN's managing interest editor, complained firsthand accounts, mostly anonymous, from a handful of fans and one cosplayer, all of whom felt mistreated, insulted, or physically victimized by Mignola's actions. ANN also published photos of the actor embracing young autograph seekers. The article consolidated and at least partially legitimized the social media post. Because again, nothing is legitimate like a bunch of anonymous accusations that can't be proven and are likely unprovable. I don't get a lot of great sleep working on these types of stories, Leverage tells me, recounting the hours of research and ethical quandaries behind her reporting. You have to almost disconnect emotionally to make sure you're seeing everything from all sides. You know what else is a great way to do that research? Talk to the lawyer of the person in the controversies, which hasn't happened yet. Within 2 weeks, the two US-based production companies, Rooster Teeth Productions and Funimation Productions, permanently severed ties with Mignola. Just like Disney permanently severed ties with James Gunn. It makes you think, doesn't it, Jim?
Yeah.
10 of his 14 appearances at future cons were canceled or had their invitations withdrawn. He hired a law firm, he tweeted, to salvage my reputation and my 20-year career in the industry. Mignola did not respond to my request for comment. Because you know what happens when you're having a lawsuit? You don't comment about things. Your lawyer does. I'm sure if I were a professional journalist working for the Japan Times, I would know this and talk to his lawyer. Hundreds of thousands attended the annual anime convention that take place.
Are you saying that R. Kelly shouldn't have done that interview and they just should have interviewed his lawyer?
Well, his lawyer should have been sitting with him. And his lawyer should have been saying, no, you don't tell them you bought people. Just don't say that. Yes, I know you bought people. I saw the checks, but don't say that. Listen, you shouldn't have listened to Jesse Smollett when he told you to just pay for it with checks.
Seriously,
hundreds of...
It's the current year and we're using checks. Did anybody learn anything from Jerry Springer? Anybody? Nobody?
No.
Nobody?
No, they didn't. Hundreds of thousands attend the annual anime conventions that take place across the United States nearly every weekend. That is not true, but there are a lot of anime conventions. Some cons are over 2 decades old. This is true. Not the first instance of impropriety in recent years. Unlicensed photographers taking pictures of scantily kept cosplayers without their permission prompted the now standing convention hall's warning signs, cosplay is not consent. Again, it's weird how you have a job where you dress up in a costume that you don't want people to take pictures of you in a costume in a public place. That's weird, isn't it, Jim?
Yeah.
Last spring, one of the organizers of Houston's Anime Matsuri...
When I wear a t-shirt that says, like, I airplane New York, and then I get a complaint that people are paying attention to it, I mean...
Yeah.
Whose fault is that? Me for buying an airplane New York shirt.
Yeah. Last spring, one of the organizers of Houston's Anime Matsuri publicly apologized for his unwanted sexual advances after former attendees launched a campaign to boycott the con. In October, an Anime Con regular who hosted game shows at several cons announced his retirement after an alcoholic outburst at his home resulted in his arrest for beating a cat. By the way, Houston's Anime Matsuri is one of the conventions that not only hasn't canceled on Vic, they took an advertisement on a live stream that was talking to Vic's lawyer for 100 buckaroos to say, hey, Vic's going to be coming to our convention. Maybe you should go. So the Twitter outrage mobs are trying to tear that convention down. There's also one in Hawaii who they're trying to destroy as well. But American voice actors, especially those who play roles in popular titles, have become quasi-celebrities at U.S. cons, pillars of attractions for badge-buying attendees who wait hours in line to pay for an autograph. You see, that's part of why I wouldn't go to one of these things. I mean, I would not pay for a selfie. Like, if we had a thing where you could, like, hey, drink scotch with, who's a famous scotch drinking celebrity you'd like to drink scotch with?
Nick Rekieta?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Nick is a celebrity, but that would be a lot easier. I'm talking about
for you.
Let's go a little bit like, Dick Masterson. Let's say Dick Masterson was doing a fundraiser for Asterios Kokkinos, where like you'd show up at a place and all drink scotch with him. Vegas would be a great place to do that. Or
Ethan and Ralph and watch him get pissed drunk on Woodford Reserve. It's probably more my alley. No. Oh wait, no. Oh no.
Or like go to a bar and yell at Sargon of Akkad. Would you pay for a fundraiser for that?
Yes, I would.
I think this joke is kind of went off on the edge, but taking a selfie that's not a thing.
No,
I'd pay for it.
No,
I wouldn't. Now, if like I was at an airport and I was like, said, "Hey, you're Samuel L. Jackson. Can I take a selfie with you?" Again, I'm not really into selfies, but Samuel L. Jackson. Hmm? And if you said no, I was like, "Okay, well, nice meeting you." Or, hey, you're Keanu Reeves. Can I watch you take a selfie with those two hot chicks over there and not touch either of them?
Hover hand.
Again, but that would be
or like if you went to Washington D.C. and decided to get a selfie with Comet Pizza.
Actually, I tried to go to Comet Pizza one time when I was at Washington D.C. and they were closed because of a suspicious gas and water issue that was happening.
You mean were they dumping concrete into the basement? What basement?
But yeah, no.
By the way, I'm not a Pizzagator. I'm just
no. We're making a joke about that.
Yeah.
And both times I was in Washington, I did try to eat there, but they weren't open or available either time that it was convenient for me to go out and eat.
Wow. It
was a disappointing moment. So, Ginny McManus, the lady up at the top of the picture who's ready to breach some things, founder of We Run Anime Cons, a private Facebook group for con runners worldwide, believes the McNana storm marks a day of reckoning for U.S. convention organizers who may be guilty of looking the other way to maximize attendance and profits. And also, if you have a secret Facebook group where you're trying to keep somebody from getting some business, that may be some tortious interference and may be a little oopsie-doopsie.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, she said the rumors of bad behavior were just unsubstantiated enough that conventions could look past the ugliness, or else they were excused by the adoration and, frankly, badge sales shown to difficult guests by fans. Those days appear to be over, even though they don't have anything that actually substantiates any of the rumors. I think most con runners put the con first, said Jim Voles, former director of guests and industry at Otakon, one of the largest East Coast conventions. They work part-time, so vetting isn't really going to be as professional as it should be at big companies with teams dedicated to that. And with other allegations in the hashtag or pound #MeToo era, the rhetoric spewing from the McNana affair grows ugly fast. In the Hot House horror show of social media, accusations presume guilt without providing evidence or legal proceedings, and defenses turn vitriolic, personal, and infantile. A great way to not have things be vitriolic, personal, or infantile? Talk to the lawyer of the people who's been accused. Maybe he would add some context to things.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, somebody writing for the good folks in Japan who may not be paying attention to American social media is having a little oopsie-doopsie by not talking to a lawyer and basically being a one-sided shell. But now let's sandwich this with some good news. Top Hat Studios is opening up their censorship-free storefront which will be called Hat Rack. Between the second and third quarter of 2019, Top Hat Studios will finally launch the digital distribution storefront called Hat Rack. It was developed in response to Valve banning Top Hat's Cross Love Episode 1 from the Steam store on spurious grounds of child exploitation, because people are saying no to lolly. In a press release sent out to the media, online outlets will feature software tags, so you'll be able to easily find what you're looking for, along with user reviews and mobile APK support, given that there are worries over Google Play censorship. For those of you who don't know, Google Play has been forcing developers to censor innocuous things like cleavage in games. And I want to have things that are legal that Google doesn't want me to have on my phone, but I don't trust some random company not to have garbage in their code that ruins my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I think they would have an advantage if they want to try to sue Apple or Google, that basically people don't trust anybody else because they assume Apple and Google won't allow software on there that bricks your phone. Spoiler, they do.
Yeah.
So what do you think about an uncensored anime visual novel game site coming
what do I think
soon?
About it?
Yeah.
Kill all the degenerates.
Yes, but what do you think? What do you think about the degenerates helping to promote a positive culture of free speech?
That's okay. I'm okay with it. I'm not really interested in hentai.
Yeah, but there are people who are, and we shouldn't shove those people off the internet.
Yeah, I like my women like my coffee, ground up and in the freeze. I mean, real. I like real coffee.
So
was that a little too rough?
that was a little bit darker than I was expecting.
Oh, okay.
Much like the roast. And on the flip side,
or maybe you can go buy some burgers and then disguise them as your own cooking. Oh, devilish idea, Jim.
So, while we're getting some positives in the world of game distribution, there's going to be some negatives. Steam will start censoring off-topic review bombs for games. Valve will be changing the way user reviews are handled. The company announced they'll be censored what they consider to be off-topic review bombs for games that catch the ire of the community. In a Steam community post published on March 15th, 2019, Valve explains that they're getting rid of enumeration or review bombs towards the overall aggregate, saying, "Continue to listen to feedback from both players and developers. It's clear to us that players value reviews highly and want us to ensure that accurate and trustworthy developers understand that. They're valuable to players, but they want to feel like they're being treated fairly. I.e., they want to make sure that the reviews say exactly what they want."
I.e., Bethesda's finally going to get some good light, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
We also spent a bunch of time building analysis tools to help us better understand what's happening in the reviews across all titles on Steam. With the feedback and data in hand, we think we're ready to make another change. Change can be described easily. We're going to identify off-topic review bombs and remove them from the review score. So what do you think about yet another site that's supposed to be dedicated to users providing feedback to other users being cut out?
Look, I think there might be something to that. Like if there is a game that, I don't know, let's say one of the voice actors, right, goes on some award program and says, "Look, we don't make games for 40-year-old white guys." Okay,
yeah.
If you didn't like Fallout 76, it's because that game wasn't made for you.
We don't know who it was made for yet, but it wasn't made for you.
Yeah, and we don't care what 40-year-old white dudes think. And you go and give that game a negative review based on that, and you review bomb it. That's fair. But I have a feeling that it's going to not be used for things like that. It's going to be used for things like, let's
why does Fallout 76?
Yeah,
why does Fallout 76 have no actual game content or story content in it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's off topic. We need to get that off. Shut that down. Shut it down. But you know what? This makes me think about another large company that's asking you to trust them to do the right thing. And Forbes has a good question to ask us. Who will trust Facebook Bank? Not anybody who's paid attention to news at any point in time. So for those of you who don't know, Mark Zuckerberg, who recently had his whole Facebook site have an oopsie-doopsie not work, wants to be a banker. He wants to give out his own cryptocurrency that will be used for banking and financial transactions. This week saw global service outages taking Facebook off the grid on Wednesday, the longest outage in 15 years. The ignominy of having to announce this on Twitter must have had Facebook executives wincing, especially since they had a chance to buy Twitter.
Well, as much as I love cryptocurrency, and I know you disagree with me on this, as much as I like cryptocurrency, the idea that Facebook is going to be in charge of some sort of cryptocurrency...
well, there's a couple of different elements to the cryptocurrency scheme that Facebook's trying to do.
Okay.
One of those is they want to use it to encourage good behavior on the platform.
Oh.
And they also want to use it as a method to, on the back end, support their plans for more secure financial transactions and other things, which I'll be mentioning in a moment, over the Facebook platform.
Oh. But I think the really creepy vibe from it is Facebook has already been known for not really respecting privacy. And if they have a giant, public ledger, they're probably going to be a whole lot better of siphoning through where all that money went, why that money went there, and when did it go there. Better than probably a whole lot better than people shifting through all of the public ledgers from blockchain and Litecoin and that sort of.
Well, actually,
and Bitcoin.
The article details how there was a 60% decline in consumer trust for Facebook before their recent testimony about some of their data oopsie-doopsies. Mm-hmm. And this also hasn't been a good year for cryptocurrency. There's been an 80 to 78% reduction in cryptocurrencies that are publicly traded. Mm-hmm. And it went something like this: if Mark Zuckerberg had charged you $10 for a utility token of Facebook coin when you signed up to Facebook years ago to develop a user profile product that is sold to advertisers and third-party data providers, which allowed you to buy your own profile product with the coin and populate it with the data you choose, you would now be participating in a share of the revenue of the $485 billion market capitalization generated by Facebook, and we would likely have $2.7 billion happier and wealthier Facebook network users on the planet, even after the Cambridge Analytica scandals and outages. In this fictional user case, the utility token consumer participates in the economic value of the network with a product that is purchased by the token and is using the personal data to earn network revenue and create the value. While this is an exaggerated and fun example that was used last year while Facebook was facing its moment of truth, it demonstrates the power of a utility token product and the power of a network without mentioning the blockchain or cryptocurrency. So that's the business component for the rewarding good behaviors on Facebook. It's like, listen, we need you to link your 23andMe DNA profile to your Facebook page. And if you do that, we're going to give you five Zuck-bucks. So, yeah, and on a related note to that, Zuckerberg has a vision to divide Facebook into two products and it could put its $56 billion business model at risk. His vision is to split Facebook into two products, creating both public and private spaces for its users that would limit the ways in which Facebook can gather user information on which the $55.8 billion advertising model business relies. Zuckerberg knows this and has interest for jittery investors. So here's the new features. There's going to be two spaces of Facebook. A town square where people can talk to many people at once. Think the Facebook newsfeed, groups, Instagram posts, and stories. And a living room, a closed-off space where people can interact privately using messaging with end-to-end encryption. Think WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram DMs. In other words, things you can already do now privately on Facebook. So here's how you explain the private thing. You can imagine many simple experiences like this. A person discovers a business on Instagram and easily transitions to their preferred messaging app for secure payments and customer support. Another person wants to catch up with their friend and can send them messages that goes to their preferred app without having to think about where the person prefers to be reached, or simply post a story about your day across both Facebook and Instagram and get all the replies from your friends in one place. So basically, he's dividing the people who use Facebook for the neurochemical rewards, and people who use Facebook as, hey, I have a group of people in my role-playing game, and I'm organizing my game through a Facebook group. So we need to use that to make sure we could confirm everybody's schedules and stuff like that. But this will come with a cost, end-to-end encryption, along with other plans to give people more control over their data, such as a clear history tool and disappearing posts, would make it harder for Facebook to gather user data on which its business model relies. The company has made $55.8 billion in revenue in 2018, the bulk of which came from advertising. He's coming down pretty hard on putting data outside of Facebook's reach for advertising. Former Facebook security boss Alex Stamos said. MG Siegler, a general partner at Google Ventures, put it this way: this is a tectonic shift. Either advertising has to be reimagined again or weaned off of. So what do you think about the future of Facebook, Jim?
I hope it crashes and burns, and whatever Zuckerberg does to make it crash and burn, I'm all for it. Yeah, split it up into two pieces. Do it.
Well, you know, his plan is, after Trump defeats whoever the Democrats nominate, is to run for president in 2024.
No, we all know we all know we're getting President Yang, and we're going to get that $1,000. Hashtag Yang Gang.
See, I gave you a place to put the gang in the show.
Thank you.
So, for those of you who don't know, Jim and I both love our meme, and Yang Gang is a hot new meme that's starting. I'm not sold on it, but Jim is, because who doesn't like hot pink hats that say Yang Gang and $1,000?
Well, it's a little bit more than that. Accelerationism. It's one of those things that I'm like, yeah, it's not a good thing. Oh wait.
So for those of you,
it just keeps seducing me. It just keeps seducing me.
For those of you who aren't into obscure sub-political philosophies, accelerationism is best expressed by Alfred from The Dark Knight Rises. From The Dark Knight Returns, the one with Jared Leto. Yeah, some people just want to watch the world burn.
Jared Leto?
Oh, no. Heath Ledger. Oh, God. I actually think Jared Leto was also dating the Olsen twins at one point in time, though. So maybe that's where I got confused.
You were thinking of Blade Runner.
Yeah. And also, Jared Leto played the Joker in Suicide Squad, terrible movie.
And about that was DC being the Joker, not Jared Leto, because they were really wanting to watch the world burn. Speaking
of which, we have two conflicting stories about the hot new DC project that I'm looking forward to: Shazam! Screen Rant says Shazam is projected to have the lowest DCEU opening weekend.
No.
Warner Brothers' Shazam is currently projected to have the lowest box office opening for a DC Extended Universe movie yet. The DCEU turned 6 years old in 2019, has already seen its share of commercial successes. No, it's seen two. And misfires: Justice League, Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman. Not good. Nevertheless, the future looks pretty bright for DC's superhero franchise between the promising slate of movie schedules through 2022, one that includes Wonder Woman and Aquaman sequels, and early positive word of mouth about Shazam, which we're going to get to here in a minute. So the projected opening for Shazam is $40 million in the opening weekend.
I have a feeling it's going to be a whole lot better than that. I think a lot of people are expecting this movie.
Aquaman debuted at $67.8 million. Wonder Woman opened at $103.2. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice opened at $166 million, and it was a giant trash fire. Fortunately, Variety was reporting that the film had an $80 million production budget, which is even lower than the $90 million number previously reported, so it doesn't need to perform nearly as strong as previous DCEU tentpoles to turn a profit. Aquaman, by comparison, cost about $160 million to make. Plus, if the movie continues to generate positive buzz, its opening weekend could easily rise above the $40 million projection. Now, on the flip side, Sci-Fi Wire, which is frequently a shill website, Shazam gets near perfect early buzz, as critics says, another win for DC. Many believe the early buzz for a movie can make becoming a smash. That appears to be good news for DC's next superhero film, Shazam, which hits theaters on April 5th. It's weird that they call it Shazam, though it stars Captain Marvel. So weird. The movie sees streetwise teen Billy Batson transform into the titular adult superhero simply by shouting one word, Shazam. Going to be well worth the wait, judging by its first reactions from critics who have seen the flit. Yeah, so Shazam actually released the embargoes from the film critics a month early. And one of the critics calls it a big, goofy, lovable film and unlike anything DC has ever done. And there's a picture of Captain Marvel, a.k.a. Shazam, and one of his foster brothers there drinking some colas in front of a convenience store. And it's all bright and cheery and happy.
Yeah. Is that Tab?
That is not Tab. Oh. That's generic cola.
Oh, that's right. That was the 80s. This is not an 80s throwback.
Yeah, and it's generic cola because they didn't have a thing to make it. So,
yeah. Well, if you were a cola company, and you kept seeing things like Justice League and Batman vs Superman, and they were like, "Hey, you want to use Coca-Cola?" No, don't even no.
Like not even RC Cola would get in on that. But here's why I think Shazam is going to do great business. Simple. It's about a 12, 13-year-old kid who gets to have magic plus the superpowers of Superman.
Nice.
Why? Because he's a good kid, and he gets to be a hero. So, are you looking forward to Shazam as much as I am, Jim?
Fuck yes.
And once Shazam
almost as much as Endgame, but fuck yes.
Once Shazam comes out, by the way, we're going to be talking about the history of Captain Marvel versus Captain Marvel. And also we're going to be talking a little bit more about Captain Marvel here in a little bit. But we're going to stick with the DCEU. Warner Brothers made a little bit of an oopsie-doopsie. They're hiring for a new movie, and they're looking for a Hawkman. Oof. And Warner Brothers, to develop Hawkman movie, wants Muslim actor. A new report indicates Warner Brothers and DC Entertainment are working on developing a Hawkman movie, and they're specifically looking for a Muslim actor for the lead role. So, for those of you who don't know, Hawkman features a very weird backstory and a very weird timeline, but it centers around ancient Egypt. So, isn't the correct answer to that question, oh, maybe we should have an Arab actor? Or a North African actor, or a Mediterranean actor. These would be things that would be visually descriptive. But Muslim actors means, hey, let's hire an Indonesian guy to be Hawkman. No. I mean, Hawkman doesn't have to be a particular race because of how weird Hawkman is, because he's actually a space alien who ends up reincarnating on Earth. I'm not entirely sure how they're going to play that into a slightly more toned down explanation in the movies, but Muslim is not a race. Indicates that they're looking for a Muslim actor between the ages of 30 and 39. Again, not an Arab actor, not a North African actor, but a Muslim actor.
I know Muslims, and both the Muslims that I know are as white as me.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of an oopsie doopsie there. Maybe they should learn that Muslim is not a race. Speaking of races, there's a shocker going on the set for the Flash movie. Ezra Miller writing script and bid to stay on as a star. So Ezra Miller was played Flash in the horrible Justice League movie. It was not Ezra Miller's fault. It was the fault of a lot of things. Most especially that they said, hey, let's take dark, depressing, brooding Randian, Zack Snyder, and have SJW progressive liberal Joss Whedon, who's kind of known for being quippy and fun, and let's have them both direct the movie. And also, let's, have Ben Affleck, when he's a bit of an alcoholic, being the supervising producer for the movie. And also, oh, wait, what? We can't get Superman's mustache out? Hey, there's this cool porn software application for $150,000 that we could just do it. Nah, we're going to use like $6 million, $7 million of CGI, or $12 million. It's going to be a lot of money on CGI. But the CGI looks really terrible. This $150,000 program looks great. No, we're we're just going to use terrible CGI. Although, again, that image in my head now makes me want porn stash Superman in the comics, just to visually see it. Anyway, well, wait, that's not all. The actor's writing the script with Superstar Comics author Grant Morrison, who is also a wizard. He's a more approachable wizard than Alan Moore, and he believes that things he writes in the comics can happen in the real world. So isn't that the kind of person you want to help you write a script?
Yes. Alan Moore?
No. Grant Morrison.
Oh.
Grant Morrison, who once famously commented about Alan Moore, "Yes, Alan, we know you've done LSD. You just can't stop talking." In a bid to keep himself involved as the Scarlet Speedster, actor Ezra Miller is taking a hands-on approach to The Flash. Miller is taking a stab at writing the script for the Warner Brothers project. Hollywood Reporter has learned he has teamed up with Grant Morrison, the acclaimed comics author, to pin a draft that could determine if he stays on playing crime fighter Barry Allen. The development has bubbled up from a clash of creative visions. John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldenstein, who have been on board the project since January 28th, have a lighthearted approach to the material and even hail from that sort of background with credits like Spider-Man Homecoming and Game Night. As sort of note, that is the general track favored by the Warners, who scored $1 billion hit with Aquaman by going for a fun spectacle route, and it seems a strong buzz around Shazam, which is wearing its superheroics is fun on its sleeve. Miller is said to want a darker take on the material. So what do you think? Do you think that's a good decision if, Margot Robbie's Hot Topic Adventure 2 does well? Wonder Woman did well by being fun. Aquaman did well by being fun. Shazam looks like it's going to do well by being fun. Do you want to be the dark, edgy boy in that roster?
No. See, it would work if it was just a Batman movie, and you just wanted to have because Gotham is supposed to be dark and edgy.
Yeah.
All right.
And
not Zack Snyder dark and edgy, like Christopher Nolan dark and edgy.
Well, look, in fairness, Zack Snyder couldn't go Zack Snyder edgy with Batman because that would involve him getting gang raped in a prison. That was a thing that Zack Snyder actually said in an interview before he got hired to do a Superman movie, that he wanted to rape Batman in a prison. That was a really good decision that was made, I think. Don't you, Jim?
Yeah, that was a good decision to cut that. Yeah. Too bad
so
we're going to cut the rest of the 2.5 hours. From that
so
the
DCEU has made some good decisions. They have James Gunn making Suicide Squad 2, which is probably going to be pretty great. And Marvel Comics is making some interesting decisions of its own. Earlier this month, it was announced that the Eternals would feature an openly gay character, and the MCU's first one at that. Even though they did have Valkyrie, who was bisexual, and that was in the movies. But why let what was actually in the movies be indicative of anything? And also, we did use that as a promotional gimmick on the movie, but again, you rubes aren't paying attention to that. We still have yet to get any sort of confirmation on which character it would be, though if it is clear Marvel is working on making sure everyone is included in their portrayals of well-known superheroes, just as Stan Lee intended. And that is actually true. That's part of Stan's vision. He wanted everybody to feel that they had a piece of the superheroes. This past November, Executive President of Production Victoria Alonso states in an interview with BBC, the gay community has not been represented whatsoever. Again, even though they sold us that, Valkyrie is totally gay. She's bi, even though we only allude to it in a flashback, and she's been referred to as banging Hulk. She is totally gay. She's bi. Totally a thing. The gay community is not been represented whatsoever, adding, I'm gay, so I can tell you that I would long for that. At the Captain Marvel premiere, she restated the sentiment, telling Variety that the time is right to include gay people as superheroes in the franchise. So, one of my problems with this whole movement for representation, am I being critical of it, is I don't look for people who are like me to be heroes or to be iconic cultural items. I mean, because if we're doing that, really, the show that is more often than not like us is a show like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Or Seinfeld. Do we want to be Elaine, Jim?
No.
Do you want to be George?
No. Oh, no.
Exactly. But that's more often than not who we are. What we're looking for is somebody on a show who's not like us.
Yeah.
That's why Captain America is a good character. That's why Iron Man in the Marvel movies is a good character, because they're not like us.
Yeah.
They're kind of colorful and flamboyant people who become better through struggle and hardship.
And Black Panther. That's why I like Black Panther. And it had nothing to do with the fact that he was black. He was different from me in other respects as well.
Yeah. And he had some tough experiences. His father got assassinated.
Yeah.
And he had a cousin who wanted to kill him because he's angry about stuff.
Yeah.
Alonzo shares his feelings about LGBT.
And he lives in a world that's interesting.
Yeah. Alonzo shares his feelings about LGBTQ inclusion in the MCU with Kevin Feige as well. He spoke to The Wrap a few days ago, and he also spoke about diversity in the MCU. He has very clearly stated that Black Panther was not a fluke. It was a very successful movie. And though he did not state any specific details, he did say the studio would not be afraid of showing diversity in the roles in the future. People also asked to think about Black Panther, so the notion of representation on screen in front and behind the camera. Somebody asked me once, so is Black Panther a one-off? This is the future, this is the way the world is, and the way that certainly our studio is going to be run forward because it brings about better stories. The more diverse the groups of people making the movies is, the better the stories. So I'm going to take a little pause here for a moment. We're going to have a little conversation about a show from a comic book. So there's this comic book show. It's about a dad who's a scientist, who's married to a mom, and he's got a bunch of kids who get powers from an alien horse guy. An alien horse gives the kids superpowers. Comic book, kids have superpowers, alien horse. A popular interpretation is because the dad wears a BYU t-shirt in several comics, and because he has like 6-7 kids, is that he's Mormon. So, do you think Kevin Feige means that we're going to have a TV show, because it would be about a bunch of kids with superpowers, so TV show would probably work better than a movie. So are we going to have a Mormon superhero TV show? Is that the kind of diversity Kevin Feige's talking about?
No.
And why not?
Well, because Muslim is a race, but Mormon isn't.
That's not what I mean, though. Because we can have a Muslim character. There's going to be some Muslim characters that are going to get out there. There's going to be some gay characters out there. But why can't there be a TV show about a bunch of Mormon kids who have space, alien, and science adventures?
Because Mormonism isn't a race.
We're not talking about races. Because diversity also includes religion. Because when they make a Fantastic Four movie,
it's because Joseph Smith liked his women white and delightsome, maybe. They weren't allowed to have black priests in the priesthood until God magically changed his mind in 1978.
When they were recruiting in Brazil, where most people were of ethnically diverse backgrounds. Yeah, exactly. Now, I know you have some issues from your cult background about Mormons. I have a lot of friends who are Mormons, even though I'm a critic of the church in a lot of ways.
I have Jack Mormon friends.
I have non-Jack Mormon friends, and I have Jack Mormon friends.
Yeah.
And I have secret Jack Mormon friends who are actually publicly known to be in another religion, but are actually Mormon, because they don't want to officially tell the church that they're quitting.
Yeah.
Because they have family in the church.
Yeah, that means that everybody you know.
But now, putting that to the side, do you think a show featuring a young, upscale, scientific Mormon family wouldn't be an interesting show?
It would be interesting, yeah.
Playing on, themes of religion, on fantastical alien stuff, and science and technology.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Mormons love their aliens.
Well, yeah. But that's the point, is there's only a certain kind of diversity that's going to be allowed in Marvel comic movies going forward. And we're not going to get...
And like I said,
we're not going to get good diversity.
Mormonism isn't a race, but Muslim is, apparently.
Yeah.
As we've learned.
As we've learned. We have learned so much today, people. The MCU has already made some strides with not only Black Panther, but Captain Marvel with their first female-led film. Black Widow is in the works as well. And it looks to be like a majority of the superheroes in the MCU might at some point be featuring the women. Even though they don't have that many good women superheroes to produce. But I think the MCU in the future is going to make its own superheroes. So we're going to play a video, something we haven't done in a while, largely because we got a little...
What video? I forgot how to do this. What do I do?
It's the same thing you do for the intro video, just with a video.
Oh.
So there's been some analysis from...
It's been so long since I've done this.
Yes, because we had a little oopsie-doopsie with some videos, so we're kind of burned on videos for a couple of reasons. One is it feels kind of lazy to do a live streaming show where you watch somebody else's content. It feels like, like your teacher said, okay, kids, who wants to watch a film strip?
Well, I grade papers
Yeah, exactly. That feels a little lazy to me, and I'm skeptical on that. And it's very difficult to play other people's content. But Nerdrotic's a great channel, and they did a little bit of an analysis about the Captain Marvel box office being only 39% female. And I actually consulted with somebody who's a comic book store owner. He said that's about what the current mix of male to female is on comic books. But let's have Gary talk about this a little bit here.
Nerdrotic.com.
Welcome back to Nerdrotic. My name is Gary Beekler, and I come to you from Nerdrotic.com, and we have to go over some Captain Marvel numbers, but not the numbers you think. Yes, it had a huge weekend, 153 million domestic.
Is it playing on your end, Jim?
Million worldwide, because it was released in pretty much every damn theater it could be released in the world, except for Japan, a country in Africa, and that science station in Antarctica. But I'm sure it will be eventually, and I'm sure that will boost the numbers a bit, but that's why it had such a huge weekend. But the numbers we're getting into is percentages of people who saw the film, percentages of women and men. Now, you would think it was released on International Women's Day. It was announced as a feminist film, a pro-female film, and the normies generally don't get into the weeds like we do, so a lot of them showed up. But and this is a big but, Captain Marvel was popular in the comics because of men. So why would it be any different in film? And that seems to be the case. According to Nuke the Fridge via Deadline, thanks to mostly men, Captain Marvel wins the box office. After months of fighting among mostly crazy people claiming that men want Captain Marvel to fail because it has a female lead, which was crazy, most of the turnout for the film were men giving it a massive opening weekend. According to Deadline, even though Captain Marvel launched on International Women's Day yesterday, she continues to remain male-heavy. 61% of the audience was male. This comes as a surprise to no one. That means, and my maths aren't very good, but 39% of the audience was female. Remember those numbers. Now, that was according to Deadline. We will go to the cited source, and they get their information from Screen Engine Post-Track. Even though Captain Marvel launched on International Women's Day yesterday, she continues to remain male-heavy, like I said, 61% to 39% on Post-Track. Females over 25 remain the third best draw at 22% behind males 25 and up at 33%. And
now, I'm going to pause here for a moment just so we could actually look at the numbers and talk about it. Female moviegoers for Wonder Woman outweighed men 55 to 45. And that kind of was representative of my experience with Wonder Woman. Younger women were about 32%, followed by men 25 and up, which is your prime comic book audience. Then women under 25, which is arguably an up-and-coming audience. And when you look at Captain Marvel, females over 25 was third best at 22%. Men over 25 still the best. Men under 25 is your majority. So that's roughly 58% is your prime male comic book demographic age of the total movie score. So let me get back to the play button.
And men under 25, 25%, and at 4 stars, an A cinematic score, and an 86% from females and an 80% from males. Everyone is just charmed by Captain Marvel, but not as charmed as they were by Jason Momoa and Aquaman. And if we go to Upbrox, which reported this last December, and I'll just cut to the chase on this one. Interestingly, both of DC's busiest hits have women to thank. As Deadline notes, the demographic that loves Aquaman the most is women over the age of 25. And women are...
So, Jim, why do you think 52% of the audience seeing Aquaman was woman, but 61% of the audience of Captain Marvel was male? Why do you think that is?
Because women don't really want to have a character that they relate to because of their gender, rather that they want to see, they want escapism, I guess. And they like sexy dudes. They like sexy dudes.
You mean movies should be fun, escapist fantasies?
Yeah.
I'm shocked to hear this. And superheroes should be even more fun and more escapist?
Speaking of Marvel, do you remember Blockbuster? Do you remember Radio Shack? Do you remember Escapism?
Do you remember Bobby's World? That was a good show.
You're too young to remember. It was a good show.
So let's talk a little bit.
Escapism. That was a fun era.
That was a fun era. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the box office breakdown. So, Captain Marvel made 156-ish million in the United States in its opening weekend, which was spread out over 4 days, which is designed explicitly by the studios to inflate the numbers. Though the actual numbers was more like, if I remember looking at Box Office Mojo, something in the neighborhood of like 140 or 130 and some change for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which would be your normal weekend tracking, which is still very good for a comic book movie. And I believe it's better than Black Panther still, or maybe just about as good. So that $132 million, that's not all for Mickey. Huh? What do you mean? I don't get all that money. Huh? It's my movie. I should get all the damn money. Huh? So the breakdown, it varies. And it varies based on the contract between the distributor, the movie studio, and the movie theater. And when it's a bigger budget movie, or a bigger draw movie like Captain Marvel, the take varies. So there have been rumors that it takes $750 million in total box office draw for Captain Marvel to break even. The estimated break-even number would be somewhere around $350 million. That could be right in a lot of different ways. One of those being the contract for Captain Marvel could be very front-loaded. So, opening weekend, Disney could be getting like half to 65% of the money. Then the following weekend, it could be 45, then 35, then 33, then 25. Then eventually dropping down to like 10 or 15. And in China, it's somewhere between 20 and 30, though it depends on if there's a back-end Chinese production partner, then that affects how the money is distributed to the studio. So if they allow a Chinese company to sign and say that they're on the production team, they get to keep more of the profit, but if they do that, then they have to comply with Chinese movie regulations and only say things that promote Chinese values. So, Captain Marvel brought in a very good opening weekend box office. The real test of the story as to whether there's a lot of fan interest in this movie is what's weekend 2 look like, what's weekend 3 look like. We have some arguments that there have been a lot of promotions that have been done with companies that pre-bought tickets, and that those were artificially inflated into the front end thing. That's a little bit too conspiracy theory for my thinking. And a 55 to 65% drop off would be rather typical for a movie like this on the second weekend. In China, there's allegations that we're looking at a projected 71% drop off. If something like that happened in China or the US, that would be a sign that audiences didn't like Captain Marvel, bad word of mouth is hit, and nobody wants to see the movie. So, everybody out there who's popping their corks saying Captain Marvel's pretty great, need to wait a little bit until we see that we finish the job and get across the finish line. And we got a little report from Twitter about how trying to please certain people is not the way to go about doing your broadcast there. So if you can pull up the image, and I'm going to put the link in the doobly-doo here for you. Just pull up that picture of the real-life NPC complaining about...
I already have that ready.
Yeah. One thing that is bugging TF out of me is Carol wearing red lipstick. Like, why? Literally F the Russo brothers. So yes, we had a soulless automaton-like performance, which these people apparently didn't show up for based on statistical analysis of the movie. But oh no, can't have these people angry at you for her wearing makeup, looking like a normal human being in a movie produced by normal, qualified, competent directors. Mm-hmm. And also, there's rumors that she's going to be having a romance with Thor, because shipping is a thing with fans.
What we should be having is all these movies directed by brave and stunning women who could who look like they can breach things.
Exactly. Breaching is important for making a good movie. And also, The Guardian has more words of wisdom from these strong, big-brain people who are just better than us and know the way. White hero sidekick of color, why Marvel needs to break the cycle. In Captain Marvel, Brie Larson is the latest in a long line of white MCU superheroes backed up by supportive, underdeveloped characters of color. And this was an argument that lots of people trolled about on the internet, and I may have been one of them. Like, hey, the first woman Captain Marvel was a black lady. Why didn't we make her the lead of the Captain Marvel movie? Well, because that's not the one that the comic book brands has the lead character of the comic books named Captain Marvel, and we want to have this little thing called synergy with our company. And we've been spending like 10 years trying to promote this version of the character that nobody likes. And we're going to use all that energy and stuff to make a movie so people at least, oh yeah, I remember seeing pictures of this in a comic book shop and nobody seemed interested in it. Maybe it'll be an interesting movie. Also, Sam Wilson as the Falcon is there, and the sidekick for Peter Parker from the new Spider-Man movies, who was based off of the sidekick from Miles Morales as Spider-Man in the comic books, who was black. Almost like these people are not doing a little bit of in-depth analysis on their production. Captain Marvel soared into theaters last week, marking the first film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to feature a female protagonist in the 11 years. It's been a while since
we did video. I forgot to go back to web when...
Oh, you forgot how to shoot web?
I forgot how to shot web.
Protagonist in 11 years since an exception. A superhero film featuring a woman who is no longer love interest, isn't objectified, and is arguably the strongest Avenger feels groundbreaking. Even though we don't know why she's the strongest Avenger, they just tell us she is, and she can just blow up spaceships. But I mean, can Thor do that with his hammer? Nobody knows. He's not had a chance to. Unfortunately, in other ways, this film retreads old grounds in regards to the dynamic between Carol and Maria. While their relationship is sweet, Captain Marvel is yet another in a long line of MCU films that features a white lead and a sidekick of color. So, how do you feel about how problematic this is? Jim?
I don't know.
You can't you can't get into a little joke about these NPCs and their terrible thought programs.
Well, they really don't care about like what all these things come from. They don't care. They're just more interested in like, well, on face value, this is what I'm saying. I'm not really analyzing.
Or they also
anything.
don't care. They also don't care about how these different characters interacted in personalities. Like Anthony Mackie, who played Falcon, who's a great dude, and Chris Evans, and how they're playing off of each other. Those two actors both played off well against each other. Are we saying we shouldn't give Anthony Mackie a job because he's black in that situation?
Like it's kind of it's kind of like people who didn't watch. It's like I'm going to do a video response to someone, and I don't really know too much about the thing that they're talking about, so I'm just going to check IMDb and then look at the cast for some of these movies, and then just go, well, they're not first bill. They just must be a sidekick then.
Yep.
And that's not it's not how it works. You actually have to watch the things that you're talking about to understand things. You just can't look at a cast list and be like, well, must be a sidekick.
Also,
I wouldn't say that this guy was a sidekick to anyone.
Yeah.
Do you even know what sidekicks are?
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody knows what sidekicks are anymore. Yeah. Because nobody's written that anymore. Yeah. Also, Iron Man had War Machine, Rhodey, who was his best friend. So are we saying that Tony Stark can't have a black best friend? Or are we saying his best friends only need to be white?
No. Tony Stark can't have a black best friend, but a black guy can have a white best friend. You see how this works?
Oh.
Do you see how this works now?
I am feeling so much more stunning and progressive and brave now.
Thank you. I knew you'd come around. Orange Man bad.
Orange Man bad. You see, Jim's been taking a lot of stuff to be trained to be more sensitive at work, and it's really paying off.
A lot of soy-based products. Like some of the stuff you can actually purchase through Alex Jones's websites, like Alpha Male.
Oof. So again, that's just. But we're going to end this little journey into the Marvel Cinematic Universe with some positive news. The next big thing coming out of Marvel movies is Shang-Chi. And it has a director. Marvel Studios hired Destin Daniel Cretton to direct Shang-Chi, its first superhero movie with an Asian protagonist. Cretton is currently directing Just Mercy, starring Brie Larson and Michael B. Jordan. Kind of interesting how they bring those people together. David Callum is writing the script that will ultimately modernize the Shang-Chi story and original character arc. So, Shang-Chi is basically Bruce Lee, but made into a comic book character. And they did some things that were a little uncomfortable in our current climate. His dad was Fu Manchu. So obviously, we can't have his dad be Fu Manchu. And also, Iron Man didn't do anything interesting with Mandarin, which they could have done something interesting with now, especially since they're introducing aliens. His rings came from aliens, and he wanted to make China great again, so we could have had a Chinese Donald Trump villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But people weren't really prepared for that yet. So what do you think? Are you looking forward to a Marvel superhero kung fu action movie?
What was it, Feng Long? We're saying we're making a Feng Long movie?
Basically, yeah. Basically. But it's a Marvel comic book movie.
I'm getting that name right? No, I don't think I am.
I think you did. We had a little oopsie doopsie with our playing of some footage again.
Did it?
At some point, I think we kind of hiccuped when we were playing that Nerdrotic clip. Just as we're telling people you can't play videos on YouTube, we had a little hiccup there. It didn't, or somewhere we had a hiccup. Did you see on the back end where we got a strike on something?
I'll check.
Yeah, check and see what's going on, because other than playing that video, and I don't think Gary has a copyright strike system set up for his channel. That seems a little bit weird why we'd get a strike. We haven't played any other videos except for... No, it's weird.
The chat just got disconnected was all. We have no names, so...
Okay, so that was just a little weird hiccup there. So, Howard the Duck is going to get a TV series.
Are we going to get Kevin Smith again?
Kevin Smith is going to be a writer, so what do you think?
Oh, I saw Mallrats. There was... What was her name? The chick that was in Chasing Amy and Biodome.
Yeah.
Joey Lauren Adams. We got some Joey Lauren Adams movies in it, and Mallrats.
So, offbeat Marvel character Howard the Duck is getting his own animated series thanks to Hulu. The streaming service has signed a deal with comic book giant to bring Steve Gerber and Val Merrick's creation to life following the announcement at the Television Critics Association press tour. So, here's a funny story. Howard the Duck was made as a parody Donald Duck. And now Donald Duck's boss owns Howard the Duck. Do you think we're going to get an actual Howard the Duck movie that represents the sort of biting satire of the old school Donald Duck character?
Probably not.
Yeah. And that's a little bit of good news, because, weren't you kind of fond of the old Howard the Duck movie made by George Lucas?
No. God, no.
It was completely cheesy and terrible. And it also had the principal from Ferris Bueller on it.
It was Fee Long. It was close.
Fee Long. Okay. Fee-Long. I didn't know that video game reference that well.
That was Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
So, Jim, do you have any idea what Critical Role is?
No.
So Critical Role is a thing that happens and something I would like to get into, but every time I try to watch it, it bores me to tears and I turn it off. So, I'm into D&D and role-playing game, right?
I'm sorry.
Well, but you know this. This is a conversation we've had.
Yes.
So there's a whole genre of streamers who do content of them playing role-playing games on a tabletop setting. Which, it's kind of boring to watch because the fun, friendly banter at a table, it's entertaining when you're with your friends doing the friendly banter. It's not so much entertaining for me, anyway, when you're somebody else doing it. And this is kind of keyed in. They started doing this when D&D made its big comeback. And so they decided that they were going to crowdfund a project to produce a series of 22-minute cartoons based on their D&D campaign that they were doing voice acting and stuff with. The 45-day campaign began on March 4th with a massive $750,000 ask for, and as of the writing, it has already cleared $6.95 million, making one of the 10 most funded Kickstarters of all time. So they're going to make it a full series. So, what do you think about this, Jim?
I'm not thinking about it. I'm too busy pulling up stuff for the next the next things. I'm not really paying.
But I mean, like, if you were to do something like this as a project, wouldn't you think the next logical step is to make it an animated cartoon?
I guess.
If you can get the money for it.
Yeah, or live action role play, audio, like a radio show.
Like a radio play, exactly, Jim. Exactly. Are you implying that maybe I brought this up as a way to sort of tease a future special project that's possibly a little behind the schedule and the writing, but we're going to get that fixed soon?
Yes.
So I will probably watch this cartoon series, even though I can't get through an episode of Critical Role. I just can't. I want to, but I can't. And Netflix is also going to be doing a new anime series about Greek mythology. And they're going to use the same animation studio that did Castlevania.
Oh, nice.
Netflix has got another original anime series brewing. It's called Gods and Heroes, and it's inspired by the stories of Greek mythology. In Gods and Heroes, we wanted to tell a wholly original story set in the beloved world of Greek mythology. We're all thankful for such an amazing cast and for such great creative partners at Netflix and Powerhouse Animation. We continue to push the envelope of the anime genre in ways we've only dreamed of. So, what do you think about that? Do you think that's something that, once it gets developed and released, is going to be something we need to keep in rotation? Because,
don't we already have Thor?
Well, we don't have a Thor cartoon show yet. But Thor's a movie, and this is like just a Netflix series. I'm interested in doing this because I like Netflix better than Amazon Prime, even though Amazon Prime has much better trash than Netflix.
Which, by the way, sorry we didn't get to do a video of this one because I didn't watch it. It's my bad.
Oh, are you saying we have to kick Deathstalker 2 to the curb for the next show?
Yeah, until the next show. Yeah.
Okay.
It took a lot of energy. It really took a lot of energy for me to get up and go see Captain Marvel, which I probably shouldn't have been because it wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't great. But I just kept hearing people saying, nah.
But my big problem with Netflix, though, is I don't think they have a good way to do a 10 to 12 episode story yet. I mean, there are some shows that do, but most Netflix shows are like, there's a good couple episodes at the beginning, good couple of episodes in the end, and it's kind of flabby and inconsistent in the middle. And that's what I think is, holding Netflix back as a platform. Need to work on your quality control in the middle of your shows. But something that I know you will probably be very interested in
yes.
coming up as a documentary film, the Colorado Killdozer Rampage is finally getting its own movie.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's a documentary, not an actual movie.
Oh. He was the hero. He was the hero none of us wanted, but we definitely deserved.
So, for those of you out there who aren't old enough to remember, or for those of you who are just more interesting on that, is there was this thing called the Killdozer. A man got a bulldozer, made it impenetrable to bullets or other forms of police brutality, and he went around driving around his town in Colorado, destroying anything that offended him. And it took some serious explosive work from the police to stop it. So a guy who's directed a Tom Cruise movie and one of the Bourne sequels is going to be doing a documentary on the Killdozer. I think that they really need a Killdozer live action movie.
Yes. In the MCU.
What's funny actually is there's a group of rogues in Thor's Rogues Gallery that have powers based off of construction equipment. That like Loki gave them magical construction equipment that gave them superpowers. So you could kind of sort of twist Killdozer into an MCU character if you squinted hard enough. So we're now at the point in our show where we're going to be doing some reviews, which is what Jim was busy searching for some images for. Yeah. The Killmonger Comics limited run miniseries thing finally ended, and it was very good. So the way I described it to the author when I was talking to him on Twitter, I said, this isn't a story about how Killmonger became the bad guy. We already know that story. This is the story of how he became the snake who slipped into the garden and started with a hiss. So you think the big emotional climax is going to be him fighting the superhero at the end. But no. At the end, he's shaking hands with the superhero and getting close enough to him to stab him with a knife. The emotional climax of the story in the series is he kills off that last piece of his humanity. And this is done differently than the movie. And the author of the comic, who's a friend of mine on Twitter, and I talked to him about it, he said he very purposely didn't want his version of Killmonger to be an anti-hero or an anti-villain. He wanted him to be a bad person who's motivated by bad things because, hey, I want to set the whole world on fire because of racial oppression. That's probably not a good person. That's a person who's doing some bad things. So when this becomes a comic trade paperback, you should buy it. This should get awards because this is award-winning writing. That art, look at the art on Killmonger there, is great. And it's a story about how an angry, hurt, smart person becomes a brutal monster who tosses Black Panther off of a cliff. And I think it's very good. If you like comic books, you'll like it. So there's a new Indiegogo comic book join out. The hard copy hasn't gotten to me, but the author actually released the digital copy, so I was able to peruse that before the show. It's called Asgard. So it's very much like a Jack Kirby kind of story that involves the gods, but they're all aliens that have Clark tech. So advanced technology that's so advanced that it's basically magic. And there are 4 key MacGuffins about the control of the universe. And there's bad guys who are trying to steal them. And the good guys are going out there trying to recover those pieces. And the main character gets turned into a weapon of war and death by the gods because they're running low on people because of, wars of the gods tend to be pretty brutal and people tend to die. There's also evil space elves, much like the ones from Thor the Dark World, but these are done better. Urban fantasy, if you like space fantasy, if you like science fiction and the general superhero genre, this is a fun comic book for you. The main character has, relatable connections and controversies and conflicts, but there's just such a big world around him that we don't really get into the meat of his character until the end, which it's kind of a little difficult to relate to him once the comic book comes around to him being the focal point. Because, we're talking about Loki, we're talking about Odin's Ravens, people were looking for dead Zeus. A lot of really cool stuff was happening. So it's kind of hard to go, wait, we need to get back down to earth and focus on this dude here who's about to become a superhero. But I don't remember if his plan is to start releasing these to stores. Some of these Comic Gate books have been slowly rolling out to stores, though that's much more of a case-by-case strategy basis. But if you have an opportunity to pick it up, you should. It's pretty good. And the art's very good and works very well for this sort of fantastical style.
If we're just trying to bridge the Is-Ought gap, this book exists, you ought to pick it up.
And I see somebody posted in our chat to remember, we need to subscribe to PewDiePie.
Yeah,
Subscribing to PewDiePie is important.
Wait. We need Pew, die. Pi Day was just oh no.
But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about that, Joe.
Yeah. Subscribe to PewDiePie.
So there's a new Netflix series I saw called The Order. So The Order focuses on a young man. Did you see the movie Skulls ever, Jim?
You mean the kind of teen drama film about the Skull and Bones?
Loosely based off of Skull and Bones, yes.
Yes, I've seen this, yes.
So what if the Skulls had actual magic and sorcery and occult power. The main character's dad was in charge and was trying to get ultimate demonic power over everything. But he didn't know that, but he just wanted to get revenge at him because, you know, he just banged his mom in a bar using a love magic spell and made her kill herself. Oh. That's the emotional engine at the start of the series. It gets a whole lot more complicated. The main character starts to become a wizard. And just as he's about to become a wizard, he also becomes a werewolf. And there's a big quest for MacGuffin, and they prevent the end of the world, and there's an ending that kind of does a soft reset of everything that will, I think, go into a second season in theory. But this is what I mean by, you know, good beginning, good ending, kind of flabby in the middle. You know, you have interesting characters, like you have a girl who's in the occulty wizardy society who kind of breaks the rules because she kind of likes the kid, who's a bit of an upstart, but she has her own goals and agenda. We don't really get to play with that a whole lot. And the werewolves and the wizards make an alliance in part of the series, and then the wizards betray them. We don't really play into, you know, hey, you know, we were kind of screwed here, these guys helped us, maybe we shouldn't screw them over. So there's a lot of stuff that could have been done if we were still using the classic 25 to 26 episode TV series season. Yes, you end up with a lot of filler, but we're still getting filler in these episodes. And we're really just getting filler in the middle, because it's not really significant to the plot, which is super simplified because you only get to do it in 13 episodes. I recommend watching it. It's a good Netflix series. And it does at least allude to some actual occult stuff in it. So it's kind of interesting. And it makes jokes that Michelle Obama was part of an occult secret society. And other people. So it's kind of fun. And an enjoyable time. And the actress and the actor for the two young leads, they're both good. Hopefully they'll be doing more interesting things. American Gods has come back to TV. And did you ever read the book?
Nope.
You should read the book or get it on audiobook. It's a great book by Neil Gaiman, who's a great comic book author turned into a great author. So it's about a man who gets out of jail, goes on a little journey into the heart of the American dream with a guy who he later finds out is Odin, and who's fighting against the new gods that have risen up in America with the ragtag band of the old gods. So they made a TV series of it that was out, that was very popular, and the guy who was the showrunner for the first season was originally supposed to be the showrunner for Discovery, but he had a creative disagreement with the management over CBS because he said, hey, you know, maybe we should make a show that actually cares about Star Trek canon and actually, you know, cares about what Star Trek is all about.
Or maybe care about not ripping off people's video game ideas.
Yeah, that would be a little oopsie-doopsie, though CBS has tried at various points in time to say he was the one who was behind the plagiarism. Because that's a great idea. Blame the guy you fired for the problem that came in after you fired him.
It's not like you could tell them, hey, you can't do this.
Or I'm sure there's an email somewhere that he says, hey, you can't do this, that's stealing. So he did the first season of American Gods, and he made some subtle changes to the original plot. But it's kind of like there were some new stories in the same universe that were written in books that Neil Gaiman did, so he sort of incorporated some of those newer ideas into the original storyline and plot line. The main character, Shadow Moon's wife, a lot of people didn't like how her character was treated in the book, so they kind of enhanced it. And after the first season ended, he and Starz had a little bit of a creative differences problem, and he's no longer running the show. I don't know if they technically have a showrunner right now, but Neil Gaiman has come in to be a de facto showrunner. And he's basically said, anything I've written for this universe, we're going to adapt into episodes of the show for as long as they want it for. And if we run out of all of that stuff, I will write new stuff for them to make TV show episodes out.
Nice.
And so, at this point in the show, the main character knows that his boss is Odin. Of course, his boss's name is Mr. Wednesday, so for anybody who has a passable education, you're going to say, huh, that's a weird name for somebody to have, Mr. Wednesday. And he's played by Ian McShane, who's pretty great. All the acting's good in this. And it's a highly recommend. And I know where the book ends, but since they've made some substantive changes, I'm not sure the TV show is going to end in the same place as the book. And I think Neil Gaiman writing for the show now, and Neil Gaiman also wrote for Doctor Who back in the old days, so he has experience with writing for TV shows of this sort of genre and caliber. I don't know if he wouldn't be of a mind to say, maybe I should write the show a little bit differently to add different layers and textures to my original creation, or incorporate new ideas that I have. Like there was a goddess of lust featured in the story who becomes the goddess of a sex hookup app in the world of the universe of the show, and that's how she regains her relevance and her prominence in the society. So it's a good show. First episode seems like we're on a good start. And we're going to end our review section and end our show today with an Oscar-winning movie that I didn't see before the Oscars because it wasn't my cup of tea, but my mother's husband was out of town. She was around, and I said, you know what? I'm going to take my mother out to a movie. So something I learned for the AMC A-List, you don't get to pay for a second person on your app for free. You actually have to pay for their ticket.
Yeah.
That was an annoying thing to find out, but I was like, well, screw it. It's only $9. And we went to see The Green Book. So The Green Book's title refers to a classic bit of Americana that was written for black people who, back in the days of Jim Crow South and segregation in general, like, if you need to find places where coloreds can stay, here's the list. And you have a upper-class, snooty black musician who is a real person. He's going on a tour of the Deep South, and he hires a bouncer from the Copacabana to be his driver and fixer on the road. This movie is an example of a well-written movie. Direction was also very good. Acting was very good. And the thing is, we're going to talk about a lot of genre movies. We're going to talk about a lot of comic book movies, and I'm going to take apart the writing. And people are going to say, but Larry, it's just a superhero movie. A superhero movie does not have to be written worse than this. You don't have to be written to that same bar, but a superhero movie can be written with the same level of care that this movie was written. There were lots of things that happened in the movie that ended up getting called back into later. There were lots of things that were parallelisms between the two characters. We got to see their struggles. We got to say, hey, I may be this elite upper-class musician, but there's something you're going through that I went through something similar, and I can help you get through that. And there's a guy who's saying, listen, I'm a blue-collar New York schlub, and I'm happy with who I am. And you should be happy with who you are. You don't have to be something other people want you to be. Also, interestingly enough, the bouncer from the Copacabana also has a talent for being a food eater. So in the beginning of the movie, he was having some trouble paying rent, so he was betting guys in his neighborhood that he could eat more hot dogs than them. I'm not sure that's a thing that ever actually happened. I've never been in a place where I would bet somebody $50 that they could eat a whole bunch of hot dogs, but that's just me. There was one interesting bit.
So wait, basically he's shoe nice, but without the alcoholism?
I mean, he drinks, but he's not an alcoholic. Okay. At least not in the way the movie shows. Because the black guy is an alcoholic. And that ends up leading to some of the conflicts, which is kind of interesting. You know, he's drinking alone in his hotel room, and he feels bad. He wants some fresh air. He goes to a bar to get a drink, but, you know, it's segregation land. So a black guy can go into a white bar and get a drink. So the tough New Yorker comes in and says, hey, listen, he's leaving. We're leaving. This doesn't have to be a problem. And eventually it's negotiated into not being a problem. But it is not necessarily a non-violent negotiation. But nobody gets hurt beyond the black guy who had already been beaten up. And there's a lot of people who give this movie flack for being a driving Miss Daisy sort of thing, but it's a very different character dynamic and a very different drama. The black guy doesn't learn how to be more authentically black from the white guy. He doesn't learn how to be less of a jerk. It's just that he learns that he doesn't have to be alone. that he can relate to other people. And the white guy learns, hey, you know, I'm kind of a D-bag, and I see people who are D-bags who aren't as nice as me out there, so maybe I should not try to be like them. Maybe I should try to be a better person. So it's a good movie. It's well written. It's well constructed. It shows, you know, positive growth and development and moving away from social problems. Why is it that social progressives don't want a movie that shows people working together, learning from each other and their interactions to become better people?
Because
isn't that what progress is supposed to be?
Because that takes effort. You should just judge people based on their skin tone and tell other people not to judge people based on their skin tones.
Yeah. And it's the one thing that there was a little bit in the beginning of the movie where a mob boss went on a tirade, and I thought it was going to come back somewhere in the movie as a reference, but it didn't really. That was one of the weird little bits in the movie where I go and saying, was there supposed to be something that this was going to go somewhere? And the white guy, you know, talking to other people in Italian, and the black guy pretends he doesn't know it until some of his mob buddies say, hey, we got a thing we're going to do. I can pay you like 10 times what that guy's paying you, right? And, yeah, so it was a good movie. It was an interesting little slice of Americana from the time. We saw a sign at a Kentucky Fried Chicken in the movie for $1 for a bucket of chicken for Colonel Sanders. Which, back in that time frame for the movie would be like, you know, $5 or $10 today, which is less than what a bucket of fried chicken at Colonel Sanders costs now. Yeah. Colonel Sanders has grown faster than inflation, so we need a government program to get us fried chicken, Jim.
Yeah. Well,
that's why we're going to get $1,000 free bucks from the government if Yang's present. So we can get discount our fried chicken.
Yeah. So we should talk about the movie that we're going to watch next week. Tease it.
Yeah, we're going to definitely cover Deathstalker 2 because Deathstalker 2 is a movie that's a sequel to a movie, but the director didn't watch it. He just made a sequel to a movie without knowing what happened in it. Yeah. Didn't have any of the same actors. He reused some of the footage, though, because they had it in the can. But it's a sequel featuring the same named character, but it doesn't seem to be the same character. But we were wanting to watch another movie about the Federal Reserve. Was that something you were wanting to talk about?
No. That's for
the other show that you do.
The other show, the Lulberts.
The Lulberts. Yeah, so we can plug that too, even though probably our audiences are 1-to-1 right now.
Yeah. So thelulberts.com. It's a political podcast, but I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you had to do like a book report and you forgot. And you realize, like, oh, I have this book. I haven't read it. I kind of know what it's about. And you go up in front of the class, and you're like, well, I don't think anybody here will have actually read this book. And so you just kind of wing it and just say, like, oh, yeah, that's this book, and there's this guy, and he does
That's kind of how Deathstalker 2 is about Deathstalker 1.
Yeah, it seems like that's the case.
And we may pick a second movie that's, hey, it's free on Amazon Prime.
Oh,
that's our segment. It's free on Amazon Prime because we're going to feature.
Amazon will put on anything.
We're not going to go straight to pickle picking for our next movie, though. We want to save that one because that is special. Also, interestingly, Deathstalker 3 is not yet on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, we'll have to wait until it is.
Yeah,
and find something else like pickle picking.
Pickle picking. So that's another recording in progress in the can.
Yeah.
So everybody, we're gonna stop the record button and we're gonna hit play and let the progress pass us all by. And just remember, Aunt Becky's gonna be doing some jail time. We should all visit her. Yep. And tell John Stamos you had to pay $1 million to get your wife out of jail for trial. Hope it works out.
All right, worms.
Worms.